And you can minimize that. And then maximize this.
Let me move up this camera a little bit.
Yeah. You can even zoom in if you want to try and get heads. But probably can't because if you've got a full room.
Does anyone know this John Shadow's doing it, by the way? That's gentleman.
No. My best guess is maybe Pete knows him since Pete got CC'd, but I don't know
He doesn't
that.
know,
No?
knows nothing of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are recording.
Just an initial
You
thought.
just click on the very top line where it's roll call. So up there. So right there, it's Riggs. So. right here. No, there's a text.
Say hi before you.
Good afternoon, everybody. A little bit after 5 o'clock. Welcome. Hope everybody had a snowy, nice day out there. I'd like to call to order the work session for the Frisco Town Council. Can I have the roll call, please?
Certainly. Mortensen,
Here.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley. Oop, sorry, y'all. Fallon,
Here.
Held,
Here.
Incan,
Here.
Sherburne. Here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First up on this afternoon's work session is agenda item number 1, and this is the Slopeside Hall Plaza design and 80% design and construction estimates. And I see Susan is here, but I'd also like to take a moment to welcome Erin to her new role and give you a second to introduce yourself and welcome and glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Council members, thank you. My name is Erin Socks. I'm the new general manager out at the Frisco Adventure Park. So nice to see all your faces for the first time. Can you guys hear me okay? I guess small room anyway.
Yeah.
I've been working with the town for just over about 2 months now. I was originally brought on as our guest service manager and was recently promoted in the general manager position. So I'm excited to be here. Got a lot of good stuff happening tonight. My background, you can learn a little bit about me anyway. I began my recreation career in 2005 back in Michigan. I moved to Summit County in 2008, where I began working at the Breckenridge Recreation Department and have had, over a decade of recreation operations employment for myself. As far as my educational background, I've got a bachelor's and master's degree in sports administration and operations. So I'm excited just to be here and move forward with our slopestyle. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll have Susan continue on with the presentation.
Great. Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Congratulations.
It's gonna be great. Susan, take it away.
We're here tonight to share with you the progress we've made since we saw you last in December, I guess. Progress on the plaza design, the construction documents. Norris Design here and Bob McDonald here. He's our project architect. Megan is our landscape architect, and they're going to share the plans with you in more detail. But first, I wanted to just give you a little bit of an overview of the progress that we've made since our last meeting. So I think the first thing we talked about in December was value engineering options for Slopeside Hall. We had talked about kind of some big reductions in the footprint, which would result in, unfortunately, a loss of fun club attendees. And you guys said, let's stay the course. Let's make sure we stay true to those project goals and build it right. So the building remains as it is. I just wanted to share the changes that were made to the footprint of the fire lane, as well as some of the building materials, the roofing, the stone veneer, siding, reductions in glazing, and then utilizing gravel as opposed to asphalt for the fire lane. So those changes resulted in about $350,000 in savings for the project budget. So just wanted to share that with you. A lot of conversations at our last meeting about sustainability and goals, energy efficiency goals for the project. So we were directed to pursue net zero to meet council's strategic plan and our climate action plan goals for the town. So we did some energy modeling. We looked at various building systems We also did a deep dive into the HVAC system, since that's the main energy consumer of the building. And we also looked at solar design. Let's see. So the three HVAC systems that we analyzed are here in this chart. We evaluated them in terms of price, site suitability, efficiency goals, system maintenance, and longevity. As you can see from the chart, geothermal was the most expensive. It also required pretty extensive site work. The split system heat pump is less expensive, but it also required multiple layers of redundancy for low temperature operations. And so we settled here on the middle option, which is the variable refrigerant flow system. We felt that it was the best balance of energy and operational efficiency. Also is the lowest cost. So these were the original numbers. We've actually just this week got updated numbers from our estimator, but this HVAC system is actually saving us about 100 grand over the originally planned gas system. So that's a good thing.
Did you all hear that?
So based on the energy efficiencies gained from the modeling, the solar photovoltaic solar system can be designed to offset 100% of the energy usage at the building, at the Slopeside Hall, which is pretty awesome. This would be a first in the town of Frisco to have a net zero building. The solar system is designed for a 70,000 kilowatt usage, and the price of the solar system would be about 160K. So final thing we talked about back in December was planning commission feedback. And their feedback was mostly about architectural and material changes, just minor tweaks to better align the building with the character of Frisco and the PRA. They were super excited about the inclusion of solar to meet the energy goals, as well as to act as an example for the community. So I think that's wonderful. They also, as you might remember, asked us to take a look at parking. Staff feels that parking is adequate at the PRA at this time, and you guys directed us to kind of stay the course, but continue to monitor parking and come back to you when we felt like it was time to add more parking. So last Thursday, we also had the opportunity to present the plaza design to the Planning Commission. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan with Norris Design to share with us her plaza.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, council members and mayor. I really appreciate your time. I'm Megan Teston with Norris Design, and I'm excited. We've had a lot of conversations about the building, and today we get to talk about the space between the buildings, which is really important to how the entire thing functions. So I'm going to start just with a little history from when we very first started talking about this back in July of 2021, and we really looked at kind of this large green space as the connector between the Nordic Center, the Day Lodge, and the Slopeside Hall. And the idea that all three of those buildings start to build this, what we were calling a bit of a campus, like a recreation campus out there. That nomenclature has since changed, but the idea is still that there's a lot of shared uses and strength in connecting the three buildings. So we looked at the different uses in summer and winter, and it's really guided a lot of the design decisions, which brings us to today. What we have in front of you is really exciting to me. You can see recreation lane at the top of the page on the north side of the page. And I'm going to kind of walk through it as if you're going to enter the space from the crosswalk right up here. I think that's a great place to start because it really is how we want people to experience the space. We're going to make sure we add kind of iconic Frisco lighting to that intersection, and Planning Commission also had a great suggestion that perhaps we do even more to make that pedestrian crossings feel safer. So we are going to explore what else we can do in that front as well. One of the thoughts we had was to add seasonal planters in the summer so that there's more of a, hey, heads up, slow down, you're in a pedestrian zone. So then as you move in from the lighting, you kind of enter the space. I'm going to stop really quickly and just kind of show you for people that maybe have not been looking at this in an aerial view as long as we have. This Day Lodge and the landscaping pretty much following where I just drew is all existing. So this large planting island, this island, and these islands are all out there today. If you were to go take a look at it. You can also see the existing concrete and then our tie-in with the new concrete. One of the things we were really conscious of is to make sure that we are blending the old and the new, that we're being responsible with how we bring the two areas together and make it feel really cohesive. You can obviously tell the new proposed slope side hall is here. We are going to have a direct route to the front door from there. And really that's where we change these patterns. I'm going to kind of jump now to what I'm calling kind of the center. It's not actually the center, but I kind of call it the eye of the design, right? We have this trellis and this raised stage area. When I say raised stage, I really only mean about 12 inches, maybe 18 inches up off of the concrete. We worked really closely with the civil as well as architecture to be able to ensure that this whole plaza space is relatable in grade. So we don't have a lot of grade change across the space. It's flat for all basic purposes. I mean, it's not, it drains, so don't worry, it's not that flat, but it's flat for how you would use it and feel, how it would feel as a user. So as you're looking at this raised stage, one of the neat things we thought we'd do is kind of have a feature here, some type of trellis, be wood and steel, and that would kind of ground it. One of the things we worked really hard on is making sure the space feels comfortable with pretty much no one in it or with 200 people in it. And one of the things that's really nice about the way this stage is it's really oriented in a way that this could be the front or this could be the front. You could hold smaller events and smaller venues solely on the plaza space, or in the summer and spilling out, you could hold events where this is the stage and the audience is out in this lawn area. So that was one thing we were really excited about, to incorporate the softscape and the hardscape to capture the views of Buffalo going this way, but also the views of the 10-mile range going this way and this way. So that's one of the things that we really liked about this. The paving pattern kind of emulates from there, and I would say intensifies that. And then we have a large spillover apron for outdoor, indoor uses between the slopeside hall and these multi-purpose rooms here. We do have a route to the yurt as well as to the tube storage, which is primarily winter uses. And that would be over the snow. I also wanted to mention that we worked also hard to look at the lighting in the plaza, and we're going to propose solar lights for the plaza to take out some of the existing ones that are there that are not in the best condition and replace them with solar. Like I mentioned, we did talk to Planning Commission just last week. They were really, they were excited, which was cool. They definitely had a few things that they brought to our attention. One was that pedestrian crossing and making sure that that was safe and kind of emphasized in our design, which we thought was great feedback. And I also really love the idea that we would take more movable trees and use them along the other sides of the slope side hall as well. When I say movable trees, they're actually just trees and planters. They're not going to be moving all over the place. But the thought was, in working with Public Works heavily, is how do we maintain this and how do we have seasonality with it? And that was one of the solutions we came up with in order to bring green space into the area while not making it super hard to move snow around. The last thing that Planning Commission did, kind of, I want to say lob up there, because they did say it was an off the wall idea, but they did mention the fact that perhaps this could be a great space for some type of pop-up jet water feature. Think Union Station or like Pearl Street, that Boulder Plaza, where you can have water, but you could also turn it off and it would just be hardscape. So that was something that I wanted to make sure I passed along to you guys tonight as well, just to consider. And we're happy to explore it should that be the direction that council has for us. The concept imagery on the left, I will say, is not exact. So take it all with a grain of salt. It's meant to inspire, not to be an exact as-built. If you want to see the as-builts, you can flip through the 80-page or the 80% CD set. And this is just a little more detail in terms of some of those built features we're looking at, some of the materials we're looking at, and kind of having that impromptu seating area that kind of rings the actual sod part of the lawn and separates it from the native. So that is the plaza. So thank you very much for your time. And Susan, I don't know if we want to just keep going or we want to do questions at the end.
I'm happy to do it either way. We have Bob McDonald here. He's going to share the 80%, just some highlights from the drawings and the construction estimate.
Keep rolling, then we can. All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. Glad to be up here today. I wanted to talk first about just a big overview of what the project is about as a reminder mainly. We've really got 4 separate projects that we're working on. We've got the Slopeside Hall building itself. Then we've got the tube storage building. We've got the Day Lodge renovations, which is a kitchen and elevator renovation of the Day Lodge. And then we've got the community plaza that Megan just went over. So we've really got 4 separate projects. We've compiled these into our 80% construction document set that consists of 93 drawing sheets and plus almost 900 pages in the specifications. So that it's a very robust set, and we're poised and ready to take it up to 100%. This is an overview just of a site plan on top of the aerial photograph, just for orientation purposes. You know, Megan went over this in great detail, so I don't think I need to spend much more time on it. But you can just see the different relationship between the existing Day Lodge here, the new Slopeside Hall. The tube storage building is up in this location. The existing yurt will be relocated here on the site. So the Slopeside Hall building itself hasn't changed very much from the last time you saw it. We did take some of those value engineering measures that Susan mentioned, revise some of the materials, but really maintain that same look and feel of the design as it was. This is some imagery of the tube storage building. So it's not just a simple, you know, shed type construction. We realized it needed to meet the design guidelines of the town and fit in with the overall aesthetics and vernacular of the peninsula architecture. So it does have some heavy timber feel. It is an open air structure. There's no windows or glass. It will have bird screens and things like that to keep wildlife out, but it's mainly a very functional type storage facility. I think it's 30 by 40, roughly, something like that. And has some sliding barn doors on the front so you can get tubes in and out very easily. This is just a floor plan of the Day Lodge. So very briefly looking at the scope of work here, the existing kitchen is in this area. We're essentially expanding out the back of it and taking over the space. There's an existing seldom used corridor here that we're going to overtake. We're placing an elevator here that will go down into the basement. And then we're putting in a grill and a hood and expanding the you know, catering and production efficiencies of that kitchen at the Day Lodge. And then this is the basement view. So going downstairs, very easy to take storage, you know, tables, chairs, whatever, up and down the elevator and make that space much more functional. So cost estimate, we just got new numbers earlier this week. So honestly, I'm still vetting some of these with our cost estimator. I'm sure you're all aware of all the supply chain issues and the changes in the market lately. So I'm afraid that, you know, it seems like every estimate we get keeps going up and up. So that's the unfortunate thing about building in these times. I guess the bright point is that the Slopeside Hall building at $4.5 million is staying, you know, is tracking very similarly between the last 2 or 3 estimates that we've gotten. This last one, it only went up about $7,000, which is very negligible. So we're happy about that. The tube storage building is about $155,000 for, you know, grading and the concrete and some foundations and then that heavy timber structure. The Day Lodge renovations, we're looking at about $611,000. The elevator is, of course, the most expensive component. Putting that into an existing building is not cheap, and but it is worth doing. Then the site work that Megan just went over, and that includes this 1.85 also includes that service drive, like the trash enclosure, the plaza, that, everything out on the site is 1.85 million. I did want to also note that we've got about $400,000 of contingencies built in. That's design contingency as well as an escalation contingency that we're trying to anticipate any kind of increase in pricing before we put out the bid sets. So we do have almost 400,000 in a contingency factor that will hopefully make sure that we don't go over that 7.1 million total cost. Okay. All right.
All right, so we're bringing this to you guys tonight. We're hoping to get consent to move forward, developing final CDs and a bid package, and also to work with our new owner's rep to develop a schedule, get a contractor on board and get this thing rolling. So we're here to hear your feedback, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. Questions, feedback, concerns? Jump in, man.
Megan, it wasn't clear on the raised stage, on the construction drawings. It looked like there were steps all the way around. Is that going to have any kind of ramp for access, for disability access on it?
I think I have to talk into this, right? That's a great question. We're still working out the detail on that. I would like to make sure there is not only for equipment, but for accessibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a quick question on that. Thanks. The 7.1 million, I noticed that doesn't include any furnishings. There's any, I mean, compared to the 7 million overall, it's probably pocket change, but that'll get wrapped up into another budget, I'm sure. But it's outfitting that building is not going to be inexpensive either, right?
It is mostly just office furnishings. Obviously, the multi-purpose rooms, we can, yeah. Any light on an estimate or what you think it might cost?
Yeah, I mean, it is an expense we need to accommodate for. The kitchen equipment itself that'll be built into the facility is included in the construction number.
That's in there, yeah.
Yeah, but so you're mainly talking tables and chairs, things that can be moved over from the existing day lodge. You mentioned the office furniture that can be moved over as well. So I could anticipate it being in the, 200,000 or 300,000 at the most, but we can do a more detailed kind of
All right.
estimate on that.
Just want to make sure
Some
because
point,
that's
yeah.
not out there. And Diane, this might be for you. The kitchen renovation, we had a very informal meeting out at the PRA. We kind of talked about scope of the kitchen for the day lodge. And in the drawings here, Bob, you've got a what looks like a 4-top range. You just used the word grill in terms of that. My concern is, I guess, what are the expectations for the scope of this kitchen in terms of production? What are our aspirational goals? If it's a catering kitchen, I'm confused as why there's a fryer there. If there's a fryer and a grill and a ventilation system, you're introducing, I guess I'm a little concerned that you're introducing an element out there at the PRA that heretofore hasn't existed in terms of food service. And, exhaust fans and grills and fryers really aren't a complementary sensory experience to what exists out there at the PRA right now. So overheated oil, burgers burning on a grill, being vented into the atmosphere out there really is, to me, is conflicts with really what we have going on. So I'm wondering from a cost benefit standpoint, what we're going for with a grill and a fryer. Not saying that even if you substituted a countertop air fryer and an induction range, because I'm not sure, I'm assuming this is all gas. Okay. If you went with electric appliances versus gas, you're still probably going, my guess is you're still going to need a Type 1 hood, but a grill and fryer is inviting a different kind of cooking experience out there. And from a catering standpoint, I'm not sure why we need it. You know, you need holding ovens, you need most stuff that's from a catering standpoint is being delivered for an event is coming as a hot drop. You're not doing that level of food production out there. And, but maybe you've had conversations about that. So please educate me as to why you think these are important and it's worth putting that element out there.
So we did bring out David and Patty from Food Heads to kind of look at the plans that Bob's team had drawn up and just sort of vet them. And I'm obviously not a food service expert. We tried to put it in their hands to say, you know, what do you think this allows for in terms of catering? And he felt like it was a huge benefit and that the quality and the level of the catering that we could provide at the Day Lodge would be increased by having those amenities there. But we're open to, you know, talking through that with you, or it maybe is better if Bob's designer was talking through that with you.
Yeah, I'm not saying you don't need a fryer, but the gas oil fryer, turning oil, I mean, it invites a whole different level of oversight, of maintenance. You know, I could see a great countertop air fryer being complementary to a catering use. You know, in terms of holding ovens and things like that, I don't want to kind of get too dialed down into this, you know. You've been running pretty successful catering operations out there without this equipment. So my concern is that a grill and a fryer out there in the PRA fired up with a loud exhaust fan is not complementary with the pastoral experience. I think that is one that we're trying to project, and the expectation that's out there. So I'd be bummed if I was at a wedding out there and the wind was blowing from that direction and the burgers were on the grill. But anyway, that's a concern I have, but I think you have some options out there that are less intrusive from the cooking experience, and not having that doesn't preclude a superior catering experience. And I think we all know that, but anyway, that's just.
Yeah, we were also looking for balance catering experience as well as the food service experience. So currently we do have a food service operation out there. It is limited based off the space and what we can serve. We did look at trying to, what else could we offer out there that would just make it so when our guests are there, they have more options and things to eat. And so that's where some of these options have come into play, where it can gain us more food options and then balance the catering side of things. Usually you're correct, when there's a wedding or an event going on, we're not usually using those other appliances. We are using just the catering aspects of it.
So, and I guess this goes to the other part of my question, which is, you know, what are we trying to do out there from a food? You know, what are people's expectations when they come out to the Tubing Hill for food that we can't provide without what I call certainly next level tier of cooking elements? And, you know, again, there's some tons of countertop stuff you can do that doesn't introduce this level of cooking, frying, grilling. And also, I think from a training and staffing perspective, doesn't introduce that you can do without introducing another position. So curious what kind of menu you're looking at serving out there out of this, with this, that you can't do with some countertop stuff that's way simple and not nearly as intrusive environmentally. That's my concern.
Dan, I just have a question because you've got to use your experience while we still have you here. On that, how do you see this comparing to kind of the process we're going through down at the marina right now, where we didn't build the right facilities for the size of what the Island Grill has become? Do you think what you're suggesting could be pulled off, still have same quality, same?
Yeah, quality is subjective. I think it comes to expectations, and you know, you can do the stuff you can get right now from a broadliner that doesn't need that level of food cooking preparation that translates to a superior product is extensive. So I don't equate the PRA experience the same way with an equivalence to the marina in terms of what you're trying to do and what you've already done with the tiki bar and what kind of goes on out there with the hustle and bustle and the parking and things like that. The PRA is a different experience and much less motorized at this point. I think there's, at the marina, you need to drop, cars are in there, they're dropping off. You need to transport boats. You need to do this kind of thing. The PRA is less that way. During the summertime, I don't see a destination food concept developing out there. Now, if that's the goal, and that's where you guys are going to take this, that's one thing. You're going to need that stuff. If you the Island Grill is a summertime destination food place. Could be during the winter. I'm not going to go there. But the PRA, at least at this point, but if that's where you want to go, if you want a destination food F&B experience out there, then yeah, you're going to need this kind of thing. If what you're looking for is just an ancillary food platform that checks a few boxes, you can get a few things out of a countertop air fryer or countertop conveyor oven. You don't need burgers, fries, grills. You can do nachos off the countertop. You can do all this stuff, a lot of it with a Type 2 hood, not a Type 1 hood and exhaust system. But so, yeah, answer that question for yourself. What do you want out there? Just something that supports, so people come off the tubing hill with some hot chocolate and some good sandwiches and some soup? Or are you looking at an expansive menu that requires this level of
Is it right to say that plan the menu and then plan the kitchen?
No.
As opposed to plan the kitchen and then figure out.
no, plan the experience
Well, that's what I mean.
and figure out the F&B part of that supports it. And decide if it's worth, if the cost, from the cost benefit side, that is what you're really trying to do out there. Because if the F&B experience is ancillary to it, then what you got out there is pretty good. You can upgrade a few things and add some stuff. You got the square footage for a great catering kitchen. Absolutely. You could plate 200 out of that. Of course, your day lodge doesn't seat that many, so you don't need it. So think about the experience first and then work to the supporting parts, which would be the F&B side. You can do better than you have out there. But this is a destination kitchen. And that's what you have at the marina. I don't think you need it. It's not a ton of money. I mean, if you look at the HVAC side, you look at the makeup area, you look at the exhaust, you look at the stuff. It's in the context of what you're spending, it's not over the top, but you could easily trim 40 grand probably off it. I mean, easy. But that's at the end of the day, neither here nor there. That's not it. It's more of a question about the experience of the PRA and if what you're introducing conflicts or threatens that experience at some level. Because if you're out there enjoying that space and you hear the fan kick on and you smell the grill going, is that where you want to be?
It draws people in to buy burgers.
If that's what you want.
But that's what you get.
All I can
That's
think
fine.
about right now is how great a burger would be. Sorry, Dan.
You
made
can
us
do
hungry.
burgers without a grill. Okay, you can
Fair
get
enough.
100% grass-fed Angus patties from a broadliner that don't need to go on a grill to be delicious.
It sounds
So-
like maybe to help facilitate this conversation is this, that we could bring back that as a response to you guys at a future meeting, is how the kitchen we've designed fits with the experience we're envisioning at the PRA.
So, yeah, I was gonna say, how much thought is that? You figured out right now to go to construction centers, that's something we have a little.
100% CDs for sure.
So, yeah, I think we should follow up on that. Go ahead, Andy.
Okay. Thanks. I think it would be great to have burgers out there. You know, I think the big thing is really that, and I think why we went in this direction is because when we were talking leading up to this, is that we should be sure to build the infrastructure to support whatever it is that we want to do out there. You know, that's kind of what we were talking about. And personally, I think that is like the marina. It's the perfect place for going to get burgers and whatever else. I mean, granted, if you want to do a, a more gourmet fare, whatever, I don't know what equipment per the kitchen should be or shouldn't be, right? And, if saving some money still gets us what we're looking for in the end, as you're saying, as far as like, let's make clear what it is we're saying, then great. It seems to me like not having a kitchen there would, or a robust kitchen there would, fall short somewhere along the way, right? And I think that's just why we ended up down that road, because that's kind of how we talked about it, but again, particular equipment, I don't know, right, for what that would be, but that's burgers, and I'm really excited for what that building actually will eventually be, because I feel like we're missing a lot of these key elements there, and that'll be great, especially when Slopeside Hall is built. My 2 cents. So let's see. With the surface area that you were talking about, Megan, can that all be pervious concrete, or whatever it would need to be pervious?
Not used to this. It is definitely something we can explore. We have looked at pervious concrete before up here. One thing I will just make sure everyone understands is it's not maintenance free. You have to come and maintain it with the amount of fines we get with the snow melting, but it's certainly an option.
What kind of maintenance for that?
It's like a giant vacuum cleaner, to simplify the term, but they come and they like clean it, because what happens is all the little fines that fall into our snow that fall into us in the winter slowly clog up the pervious concrete, and they have to like get them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you were to do, if we all decided that doing a water fountain or whatever that kids can play in, I know you guys don't like that idea. But would that work together with that, or that would be a separate drainage system that would all tie in together and it would recycle the water?
We could do recycled water with it. That is much, much, much greener than the flow through. It is its own system. It would be chlorinated similar to a pool, but it is something that is safe for people, and it could be recirculating. So it's different than any other system because of the requirements for potable water, but it could work with it. So, but that would just have to be a smaller, separate thing.
Right. Which would add to our bottom line, which you guys were already not gonna lie. Let's see, what else? I hope we're not planning at the very end to put heat tape on this building. Anyone?
Good answer.
We'll wait till it snows and find out that it dams.
This.
No, you build a tight building and you won't get dams.
Well,
Good question.
That's the thing. But, we still have, and per our code and all, we have gables and we have everything that is kind of forcing you in that direction. And then if in the end we're trying to, develop a zero net building and end up spending all of the electricity from the solar panels to run the heat tape, obviously not a great, right? And we're already doing that on brand new buildings that haven't even come out of the ground. We're already planning on that. So, I hope we never plan on that again. With that, I think that's basically it.
Are you, just to kind of keep things moving, are you in support of moving this forward to 100% construction?
I am in support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the heat tape question for the patio space, sorry, we're not planning to snow melt that.
No.
Thank God. Okay, great. Good answer. Yeah, no on the water feature. The solar size, you had said 170,000 kW. That's like 170 megawatt. So 70 kW system. Okay, so you're talking about, yeah, all right, that's more in line. Awesome. Thank you guys for going back and figuring that out. It's such a great story, and I appreciate the time it took to figure that out. And just to note, no gas, it would be electric. and we saved money doing it. So that's pretty cool. I'm in support.
Cool. I'll just quickly say, I'm kind of with Dan. I'm a little nervous about the whole kitchen thing. It sounds like we have a tiny bit of room in there to figure out how much and what extent. It's fine, because I do think that's a bigger conversation. Definitely no water features ever anywhere. We're losing enough water daily with climate change. I don't think we need to exacerbate that anyway. And yeah, I think this is great. I'm looking forward to making this happen.
Couple questions. One is encouragement to keep tweaking. Design's never done until the construction is done. So good ideas are still welcome. Don't cast it in stone just because we said we're there. Always welcome to come back with the idea you forgot. Snarky question. We spent $30,000 to have somebody create a net zero plan, and at the end we found out that it didn't cost us anything more to do net zero. What did we get for the 30,000 that we shouldn't have just done in the beginning?
It's a different design. We're designing to a different standard. So I think it's important to note that I can let Bob speak to it a little bit more, but I think it's important to note that the design was developing the whole time independently, but instead of going to point A, we went to point B and have been able to attain a net zero building, which is amazing, I think. But the modeling that we did was to compare different types of systems that were all electric. So that's a little bit different than saying, so that's saying I'm not going to use a non-renewable energy source, right? I'm not going to use gas. Whereas before we were designing with gas, and the gas system that we had was going to be more expensive. But I think as we went down the road to the end and realized that here's our building envelope, here's our reductions in glazing, here's our efficiencies with the other systems. All together, we've come up with a more efficient package as well as a lower cost HVAC system. So you could have said to us, just switch out the HVAC system back in December, don't pursue net zero for 30 grand. And we could have done that. And yeah, we might still see some cost savings today, but I guess the road that we went down was to try to achieve net zero. And that's what that design process was about. And that's what we got for that 30 grand.
And everything you've shown is fabulous. I guess I just want to give Jesse the opportunity to say net zero didn't cost us anything more than building to our code. And if that's not the case, I'm always pursuing the question of how much more did it cost us to build this building net zero as opposed to the code.
I think in this situation, and I can't speak for other situations, in this situation, we came out ahead. I don't know if that would be the case in every project. I think it's wonderful.
That I've never heard before.
Can I ask a question? So the commercial code is 2018 IECC plus 10%. So on this building envelope, what above that did you do? Or did you just build to that and then add the PV?
Yeah, we built to that. Bob said, because the two council people.
Oh,
online,
I'm
we need
sorry.
a microphone. So, thank you.
Yeah, so we did design just the building envelope to that same kind of 10% level, and that was enough for us to achieve net zero. So we didn't have to, add extra insulation or anything like that. One clarification is that we were able to save 180,000 on the HVAC system. The cost of the solar system was 160,000. So it was almost a trade-off between the two. So, that I think getting to net zero, that's how we were able to achieve it. And it's a wonderful story. And I think to answer your question about why didn't we do that in the first place, I think we're in a paradigm shift here. I think everyone is changing. And from now on, I am going to start there. I'm going to challenge my mechanical engineers to look at that first, because I think it's smarter and better.
Energy model should be part of the cost of construction. I mean, it shouldn't be an add-on after the fact. And now we've learned, but you can't figure out the cost benefits of these systems without an energy model. Really, you can't meet our code plus 10% without an energy model, honestly. Like at the end of the day, you need to model that and show how you're going to get there.
And, off of that, the idea of green building, it works right within that, where you spend more on the front end, on design and all, in order to get the better outcome in the end, instead of going down the road as we typically do with building, with buildings today and try to throw green stuff at it, and it just doesn't work that way. And so, this is like a great outcome to say we spent some money and then we were able to come in cheaper in the end, just by doing it. It's, so
Paradigm shift and deal.
good job.
Yeah.
Couple other things. The stage, I'm not worried about the size of the stage, I'm sure it's fine. I know that myself. The yurt, when it's snowy, we have 4 feet of snow on the ground, we hope. In the summer, we have none. Are we walking down to get into the yurt in the winter? Or are we walking, is it a raised platform that, how's it gonna play winter, summer?
Sure. You're gonna be sloping up to it. They'll build a snow ramp in the winter. And in the summer, we'll have an ADA accessible path and stairs to it. So.
And we've talked, but I just, to put out there, we have a beautiful new building that we're building. We have what I would consider a darn good looking shed that we're building. And then we have a yurt that's repurposed from however many years past. Is it gonna look right?
We personally feel like it's part of the character of the PRA, and so we included it in the programming from the very beginning of the project. This is kind of the first I've heard of maybe some dislike for the yurt, but that's where it sits. Yeah, yeah.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
people who are professionals at this,
It's sort of
bless
what
the-
ties
bless
it
the
to
look.
this kind of national forest sort of backcountry experience in sort of the village campus, if you will. So we've always kind of had it there because it's part of the character of the place. But if it's not, I guess we're open to that and should learn about it now.
Have we changed the character? And I don't have an answer for this. I'm not pursuing an agenda. I'm confirming. Have we changed the character of the area so much that the yurt no longer fits in, or the yurt is still okay?
I hope we haven't. That would be a goal.
That's obviously an opinion. I don't think we've changed the character of the area so much that the yurt doesn't fit in. We did really look carefully where on site we could kind of put it so that it still makes sense with the tubing hill, but it isn't as much in the line of sight to some, possible wedding venues. But I do think that there's something kind of, it's very Colorado-esque. And a lot of people don't even know what a yurt is. So when they come here for the first time and they're telling the experience that they had at the tubing hill, I think, without getting super cheesy, I think it is part of it. And if you wanted to know the stage, I can tell you the dimensions if you were curious.
Is it made for a little quartet or a band?
Sure. So right now it's about 35-ish feet long and 25 feet wide. So it's
Yeah.
pretty big. Our thought is that, depending on the event, really this whole plaza is designed as much as we possibly could to grow with this space. So we didn't want to overprogram it, but also to grow with the size of the venue. I think that when you put the trellis on it, it's a feature no matter what. It kind of becomes kind of a public feature. And then if you have the fact that you could spill onto the lawn and have a pretty big stage, that's great. But you could have it intimate facing the other way, or, it's substantial, but I think it's really going to tie those two buildings together. And the neat thing is it's kind of centered on the Nordic Center too. So it really works with how the whole space feels out there.
Dan got an ice rink. All I want in life is sound panels in the day lodge. So as we're doing the renovation, hopefully they are installed way before. But the sound in the day lodge is so embarrassing that I hope.
Was that a spoiler alert?
It is.
Did I get an ice rink?
You got a nice surface.
So we just put some effort into,
Can't raise me up.
You did
Down like that.
Dan, thank you for all your FF&E questions and the kitchen. I think we need to get function before we get form. One of the decisions is who's running the kitchen. We have a benefit out at the marina that we have an operator who is guiding us in sort of the renovation work. It's a good idea to bring in food heads or anybody else just to sort of lessen that, but I think that's a fundamental question, Aaron. I don't know if you have food and beverage background, but are we doing it or are they? and whoever that is. The patio, one just cautionary question, we're gonna be plowing this thing, I assume, so ridges are just guaranteed to look terrible after a couple of years, so the more plowable it is
Oh, yeah.
without ridges and lines. And
Those are kind of scoring patterns, so I don't think there'll be ridges.
it just,
Yeah.
I see a lot of pattern in there, and want to make sure it's not something that the plow is going to just continuously chip.
Yeah, us too.
We've got that. We've got that. So,
I'm good with it, knowing that we're going to keep working on the kitchen. I'm good with, let's get it going.
Melissa, Rick, any of you guys want to chime in on, you comfortable with this direction?
Yeah, I'll just jump in on a couple of things. First of all, the design, I'm so happy to be in this place that we're in. It's beautiful. And I would say, especially Megan, you just did such a beautiful job on all of the artistic kind of nuances on the design. And I know that all of the little vignettes and pictures you say are not, they're obviously not as built, but as much as we can stay true to that would be really exciting, because sometimes those nuances are lost in the actual construction. So those are the things, as you know, they get me excited and really distinguish the space. So I love all that stuff. The stage, I was wondering, it wasn't clear to me which way the stage would face, and with the trellis, you know, could it go both ways? And can you answer that? Is it meant to face a particular direction out to the lawn or out to the paved area?
I'm actually so glad you asked that, Melissa. That's not to be super design nerd on everyone, but that's something we talked about extensively. And actually, to go to your point of the details, it really, the details really make that, in my mind, two directional. The trellis itself kind of, oh, I'm gesturing and I don't think everyone can see me, but so anyways, the trellis itself, I would say that the interior radius of it faces the lawn area. So I think that the reason why we set it up like that is because when you approach the plaza, then you're on the larger or the outside parameter. And we're gonna fabricate it out of steel and have wood as accents. So what the steel does is it allows a lot less touchdown points in terms of where the posts come down to meet the stage. So it's really open
But
in
it can go
both
both ways.
directions. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted. It's beautiful. I'm sorry, Hunter, but I love the idea of a water feature. You know, having raised little kids here for the last 10 years, 11 years, you know, it's something that is so appealing and so much fun, and it just doesn't really exist. We can't have outdoor swimming pools. You know, a lot of our kids don't experience that. And for a tiny little window in the summer, it would be really magical. And so, you know, if there's a way to look into that with recycled water or a sustainable way, my opinion is I would love to explore that. And then the last thing I would just weigh in on is the restaurant and grill. And it's so funny that you brought this up, Dan, because I was just at another restaurant in town, and I won't name names, but they had taken all of their fry operation out, and they had something that I really loved there. And I said, you've got to bring that back. And they said, no, we're not going to do that because it is such a hassle having such a large fry operation. And I don't know how that involved the flat top, but I just had that conversation a few days ago, and you know, it really is quite a big deal apparently. And from my perspective, that experience at the PRA at the Day Lodge is not intended to hang out for hours upon hours upon hours. And so, you know, it is more kind of that quick, you know, grab and go experience. A burger does sound lovely, but you know, I think that's something that we should really look carefully at. Kind of the other impacts to the operation, staffing, training, you know, grease, everything that Dan brought up. So I'm glad you brought that up. But let's go forward. I'm so excited with this.
Hey guys, no, I'm good with the continued kitchen discussion, and the water feature, it certainly would look at it, but I don't know that we need one out there. And the design looks really nice. So I'm good to go to continue the design work.
Things will follow back up on, but I think they're gonna stop the design. Megan, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah. And next item on this afternoon's work session agenda is number 2, and that is the Frisco Bay Marina paid parking management services and Main Street parking enforcement discussion. Logan's making back-to-back appearances. Welcome back.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Good to see Town Council, and hello everyone online as well. So yeah, the paid parking and management services for the Frisco Bay Marina. It's interesting. You guys hired me to work at the marina, and my first project was to park cars and not boats. So I'll do my best here. We'll get started. So just kind of a quick paid parking review of the process, and I wasn't here for when this started, but so as identified in the 2021 Marina Action Plan, the 2021 Operational Performance Audit 1-year review performed by F3 Marina, and the 2021 Marina Access and Circulation Master Plan performed by Walker Consultants, the availability of parking at the Frisco Bay Marina was a major concern. It looked like implementing a paid parking system at the marina was discussed with council during the November 30th, 2021 council meeting. During the meeting, council supported the implementation of a paid parking system at the marina for all lots beginning this 2022 summer season. So on March 9th, 2022, staff released requests for proposals for paid parking management services for the marina. We had 6 proposals that came in, and then we interviewed 5 of the 6 companies. All had some decent ideas and some good plans, but we were most impressed and recommend moving forward with Interstate Parking Company. And with that being said, we have some folks from Interstate Parking with us tonight. We have Gareth Lloyd, Jessica Heinmarch, Shelby, and I'm sorry if I'm messing up names, Shelby Schwendeman, I believe. Okay, and Luis Garricky, did I mess that up? So anyway, this really quick, introducing them, and if you guys would like to just kind of introduce your company and introduce yourselves.
I'm Jessica Heinmarch. I'm the Regional Director with Interstate Parking, and I'm based out of Denver. But here's our local team.
Hi, I'm Shelby Schwendeman. I'm the General Manager of Interstate Parking, and I'm based out of Breck.
I'm Louise Garrick. I also live in Breck, and I'm the Customer Solutions and Operations Manager.
And I'm Gareth. I live in Clear Creek, and I'm the owner of Interstate. Nice to meet you all.
So, yeah, this evening, if there's some questions, we wanted to have Interstate Parking here, obviously. But what we're looking at is the current parking situation. If we drive, sorry. Okay, so there it is right now. Basically, we've got 4 parking areas with a combined total of 321 parking spaces. 201 are paved, 120 unpaved. B1 fruit stand lot, the most westerly lot. It's dirt right now. So that's our furthest lot. Then, of course, the trailhead parking lot, 26 spaces, 2 of which are ADA compliant. And then you got the north and the south lots, considered more premier parking, but north lot, 87 paved spaces, 4 of which are ADA compliant. South lot is where most of our boat and trailer parking are. So this is kind of the overview of the parking areas. And next slide here. So as we were putting this together and working with the different parking providers, we did have some, in order to kind of move forward, we did have some questions for council, and start with these here. Confirm the seasonal dates for paid parking. We were looking at maybe June 1st to September 10th, basically Memorial Day to Labor Day. Do you prefer a revenue share versus a flat rate? Are you in favor of a 3-year contract? And then is council supportive of Main Street parking enforcement year round as well? We are looking at 24-hour parking. Basically, folks that are staying overnight on their boats. We have people that rent temporary slips. So we do need some 24-hour parking or recommend that. We were wondering if you'd want to have interstate parking monitor that, or if that'd be something for the police to monitor. I don't know, should we answer the questions kind of at the end here? Okay, sorry, I'm kind of losing my.
We've got both policy questions as well as rate questions. And the reason too, Interstate is here, of course, they're our top choice to manage this, but before we could enter into a contract, we need some guidance from the council. So here's the opportunity if you want to start with policy and move into rate, or we could do all of them, whatever you prefer.
First, council, yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question? Are we in favor of a 3-year contract? What would be the option and why? If it's what's the difference if we're doing 1 year or 5 year?
It just seemed like the companies that did propose the 3-year proposal seemed like the most common, but I guess. Yeah.
So basically what we do is we do.
The microphone. Two council members on the.
So we proposed a revenue share, and based on those numbers, based on our CapEx, whether it's signage or technology, we felt that would give us a nice return, assuming 3 years of operation. And that's kind of the norm in the industry, so.
Council support first to go with Interstate or the staff's recommendation.
I just want to clarify, Interstate is I know it is Passport, right? Because when I go to Breckenridge, I use my Passport app. I do want to confirm that that's who we're talking about.
Okay, yeah. So there's a multitude of payment options. Passport was in place before we started Breckenridge. We also have kiosks. We also have mobile pay. So it's just one of the options. It's a software option. So we did talk with the town about that. They have some issues from a bank reconciliation point of view. So we didn't recommend them for this situation. So it would be a scan to pay. We call it Tap and Explore. So it's literally a tap on your phone and it tells you the rate, and you can register your license plate and pay by credit card or a kiosk, very similar to you see in Breckenridge.
So is there an app?
There can be an app. I guess what I can say on apps is so many people in Summit County struggle with having space on their phones. Apps are almost like an old technology. No, but seriously, and then the problem with the cell data, so the last thing you want to do is sit on a parking lot and wait, an hour for the app to download. So with the QR code, you literally take a picture like you did in a restaurant, tells you the rate. If you have Apple Pay or Google Pay, boom, done, 3 seconds.
I've left parking spots in Breck and not done what I needed to do because I could not get enough cell service to complete the parking payment on the app. Right. And didn't have, yeah. What was our next question, Logan? So we're good with them. Do we want to go into the revenue share versus flat rate? That'd be best for you, Diane.
Revenue share.
Okay. So it was suggested to do revenue shares. Council supported that staff recommendation.
What's the flat rate option? I guess I don't, that wasn't.
I can answer.
Yeah. I don't know if you'll compare it to.
I could just see it, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I use this one? Yeah.
Unless you wanted to work out.
Well, I do need to work out. So what we're seeing is, so we do now Idaho Springs, we do Morrison, we do a lot of municipal contracts. There's a big CapEx expense. So if you do a flat rate, you get involved in that CapEx expense. technology is constantly changing. So for example, the QR code tap and ski or tap and explore, we call it, that's something that just came last year. In this scenario, we would just implement that. There's no cost to the town. So everybody's moving towards the revenue share just because it keeps you out of the parking business. You take your percentage of the revenues and away you go.
Got a question just while we're on this. You know, you've got the no upfront cost to the town, 8317, 6832, or 5050 with the breakpoints. What do you envision as, you know, with, say we were parking all year down at the marina, you know, what kind of revenue do you envision generating out of this?
You know, there's a lot of variables. So we figured out
Sure.
all those kind of things. You know, we do, I mean, it's public knowledge. We do about 2,600 a space in Breckenridge right now. You're talking about
For how much? For how long?
for the year, entire year. You're talking just from June 10th to September, just June 1st to September 10th. So you want to say probably about 55% of that number. So
Per space. Gotcha. It's interesting. Yeah. And like the breakpoints. So say if this was Breckenridge and you're, you know, I mean, like, is this just per the revenue that you're generating and then you've just hit a toll and then you're switching
so
to the
basically-
next?
Yeah, so basically what we're saying is, yeah, we're gonna take some risk, a little bit of risk here, which is what we do. We have a lot of locations in Summit County now. We've got 75 locations in Summit County, so you know, initially the town's gonna receive a large percentage of the revenues, and over time as we deliver, and hopefully get to where we hope to get. That percentage will increase. And those numbers are all based on our OpEx and our CapEx. It's pretty
Okay. I guess that's it for revenue share versus flat rate. I've got other questions, but
Do you support the revenue share?
I do support it. Yeah.
Anybody not in support of that? Right. We'll go with the revenue share. Can't, Melissa and Rick, sorry, I can't see online because you guys can jump in whenever since we've got the presentation up. If you have a statement or disagree. Dates, are folks comfortable with the dates, June 1 through September 10?
I would contend what we're looking at is Memorial Day to Labor Day. Why don't we call it Memorial Day to Labor Day? Memorial Day Friday, Saturday to Labor Day Monday, and that's what summer looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
No, fair enough.
That changes every year, so.
That's why.
Mhm.
Questions? Year round, so part of the contract was doing the enforcement for us on Main Street. Counselor, you good? You saw the cost estimate of that. Are we good with them?
Explain how that works.
Yeah, please. I could. I know what you told us you do.
Yeah, so we do a lot of this. So I just was working on we just renewed with Crested Butte for another year. So it's time management of the existing platform you've got in place of 3 hours. So we just go around, we call it virtual chalking, and we have an LPR vehicle, goes around and checks the license plates. And if they stay over 3 hours, we issue a violation. All the revenue for the violations would go to the town. And I can tell you from our experience in Crested Butte, the revenues have been almost double what they expected. So it becomes a fairly good revenue source. So it's basically just about, you know, trying to control Main Street during prime time, you know, summertime when it's crazy. We're not going to charge you at all during the summer because we've already got our staff at the marina doing exactly that, compliance. So we only talked about non-operating months for the marina that we would charge the flat fee.
So the violation, the parking violation goes directly to the license plate, right? Whoever that designee is. what if that is, or how is that contested, if it were to be contested? Do the police get involved at some point?
Very
or-
rarely. So one thing we haven't talked about is we will provide a website at our cost as part of the revenue share, like the Breck Park website. I don't know if you've been on the Breck Park website. So Shelby knows that website well, and so does Lou, sorry. But anyway, the idea is that website will become a conduit for the town for parking information 24/7, like Breck Park. We would brand it. We got 2 domains.
Park Frisco and then Park Frisco Marina.
Yeah, we have
one
2
umbrella.
domain names we've already acquired. And on that wasn't me. And on that site, just like on Breck Park, you have the ability to contest a violation if you receive one. It goes straight to Shelby and Lou. And you set the parameters with us regarding, how hard you want us to be with customers. Generally, when we start, we're pretty easy, just to get the system rolling. But over time, once like Breck Park, where it's in place, people know the system. We become more stringent on it, but it's real easy process. You go online, you put in your ticket number and you say, for this reason, I didn't think it was a valid reason. We have a picture of your license plate with the signage when you receive the violation. So we have a pretty steadfast policy in place. Really comes down with what the town wants to do in that procedure, and we'll work with you on that. Our procedure with Breckenridge, Shelby's probably changed constantly, right? How we treat things, whether it's, drop offs, no parking zones, all those different things. We'll work with you on it. We're really open to it. The real goal is just to get so that, July 4th weekend, you've got space on Main Street. That's really the goal of it for all businesses and, employees and however you want to structure it. And we'll work with you to get to that point. We use the 92% rule. That's our ideal occupancy. So 92% of spaces are being used at any one time. So there's always space if somebody wants to go to a restaurant or somebody needs to go to the dentist or somebody needs to come town hall, there's a space. So we try and create a system that delivers that. So it'll evolve over time. We'll make suggestions. Ultimately, the town council will decide.
Is this just Main Street proper or, the offshoots as well?
To date, we've just talked about Main Street. But over time, we do see, once you gain control of Main Street, you will drive people. And when we control the marina, people will try to park in the residential areas. And we can control that too. We do a lot of residential areas in Breckenridge, in Idaho Springs, in Morrison.
That will be a much bigger conversation, I feel like.
If we're setting, maybe it's, I don't know, if we're setting up our system for 3 hours. I guess one on Main Street. One is, can somebody buy, if they're going to be there longer, can they buy time? And the other is your computer system set up so that if I'm parked at 5th and Main and for 2.5 hours, and then I move to 3rd and Main for 2.5 more hours, am I there for 5 hours or am I there for 2.5 hours?
We can do it either way. Yeah. You tell us what you want to do. Generally, what we find is that you do want to make it only 3 hours anywhere on Main Street because people just keep moving their cars around and you defeat the purpose. Yeah. But that's really your choice. And we'll constantly come back to you with recommendations. We'll say, we did this, and you'll get feedback from businesses, employees, residents, and then we'll say, hey, well, let's do this. The beauty of the system is extremely flexible. I think we do a lot of ski resort business. So we do the Breckenridge Ski Resort, we do Keystone. We do Crystal Mountain, 3 resorts in Utah. And we've got over 350 different products because, there's always those one-offs, like boat slips, overnight slips. We'll figure it out. We've got the technology and the programming to do it. So, and that's all included in the revenue share.
What do, from a signage perspective, do things change? So it's posted for 3, but.
And we changed that.
2 years ago.
To reference third-party
And
administration and who to go to for violations or.
I think that's on the signage that you proposed.
On the actual violation. Yeah. So in Crested Butte, they haven't changed the signs at all. So we're just using exactly. Crested Butte had exactly the same scenario, was the responsibility of the police department. And they brought us in, and it's worked out really well. I'm pretty happy that we just went for another year there. So.
Before we put on the street parking, 3-year round on the policy question.
Yeah, I think this is actually something that the planning commission has wanted to do for a long time. And so I'm in favor.
Rick and Melissa, you guys are good with that? Since I can't see you.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thanks both. I think that covers our policy questions, correct? All right, moving on to our rates and the rate questions.
And I believe these were modeled off of Breckenridge as well.
Yeah.
Hey, Hunter, I have a quick question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I just got a message from Jeff Global. Who installs the kiosks?
We do. They're solar powered.
You're looking at them. Yeah, so really when I say, for the revenue share, we take care of everything. We've got about 250 of the kiosks now installed in the mountain region. They're solar powered. Literally, we can move them on a day's notice if there's construction or anything else. They're just tanks. They're unbelievable machines. So we install them. We're responsible for them. We program them. We update them. We make rate changes. We can dial in from our phones at any time to check them. So yeah, very similar to Breckenridge, just a slightly different product that we use at the ski resort. Very effective. Yeah, so for Public Works, we take care of everything, but we ask you first, definitely, because you never know if there's a gas line or a delivery truck's going to go through there every day or all those things. So what we do is we sit down with Public Works and whoever else would like to be involved in terms of discussing where to put the kiosks, because obviously there's a lot of variables. But the nice thing about them is they can be moved very easily if there's.
Yes, thumbs up.
Like on the sidewalk, but you don't need a separate pad or something.
So we've actually developed a pretty cool metal plate. How many pounds would you say the plate is? How much? Yeah, but like Lou literally is installed. How many kiosks have you installed? Yeah. So, so they're on a plate and then we just bolt them in. So we've put them in gravel lots, we put them in asphalt, we've put them in, you name it, we've installed them in. So yeah, they work great.
For me on the rate structure, if we're good moving on to that, I trust you all as the pros. And I know, as you pointed out, the flexibility is there. And if we find we're off on the mark, then we can
So
change it quickly and easily.
our perspective on this is, the average person, I think we talked about, it would probably stay 3 hours. So if we're at that 75 cents a half hour, usually it's about 2.5 hours. So it's only, $3.75 average ticket, which I think is pretty reasonable. Average ticket in Idaho Springs is $2.80. Yeah, and Morrison, I think it's $2.18. Which is really skewed because they have different rates all over the place, so it's not really a fair comparison. So, you're looking at an average person is going to pay less than a latte for parking for their experience.
Question on this is just why is the half hour the mark and why not an hour? I mean, it takes a half an hour for you to unload your car at the marina and get anything to the beach anyway. So if they're staying an average of that long, why charge by the half hour versus an hour?
Yeah, so so the idea is, the first 30 minutes are free. So if you're dropping something off, which is great, it's a great selling point, and we think that's very important. So if you're bringing something for your boat or your kid forgot his life jacket or whatever, you should be able to get in and out 30 minutes. And then what we find is that a lot of people might stay an hour and a bit, and they don't want to pay for the full second hour. So that's why we've structured it that way. You have so many different user groups, whether it's somebody on a pontoon boat or somebody that's just there for a paddleboard for half an hour. You kind of want to do a structure that ultimately, when you say the average person's 2.5 hours, doesn't sound fair. The second idea for the Friday through Sunday and holidays is the idea that demand gets a lot stronger. So you really want to say, okay, people, after 3 hours, honestly, we want you to leave, right? So we can use those spaces for other people. So that's why that kick up to $250 a half hour. It's really your choice on that. But we do find that we do need an incentive, especially, and you guys know, I've been here on Saturdays and Sundays when you can't park. Right? You want to create those spaces for people to use at an affordable price. So that's really the goal from that rate structure.
I was, this was just in my head. I was kind of envisioning we were potentially going to be charging more for like the prime beach parking spaces. And then I think we do need to talk about, like, do you charge the same amount everywhere? And if you're lucky enough to park there, then great. If you have to park on the dirt, you're still paying the same amount and you're over there. And or just in addition, do we have any benefit for marina people, people with boats and all? Like, no, everybody's paying for parking, period. We're not going to do any sort of parking permit or anything.
Well, that's coming. Still.
Okay, that's coming. Yeah, I mean, I personally think it's premium to park close to the beach there, and it's less of a premium to park on the dirt by the farm stand.
I agree with that.
And and then it's like you're getting further into town where it's free, right? So it's almost like that could be tiered or should be tiered. And
the reason we didn't do that is you've only got 320 odd spaces, 321, I believe it is. You get in a circumstance where a person is parked here and 6 feet away, they're paying like a much higher rate. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But
6 feet away is not the dirt compared to the parking lot, but I mean, I think there's a great separation there. But
whenever we've done that, where you draw the line, you get that person that's literally, 2 feet away from the other space and they're paying a premium. So that's when in Breckenridge, where we have like Peak 9, where it's premium and you can ski in and ski out and it's all by itself, it's a premium rate for sure. If you're down at the gondola, it's a different rate because it's a totally different experience, because it's a considerable drive. You can't ski in, ski out. So
I understand that. And I just disagree, because the two parking lots are totally separate and one's more desirable than the other. But if everybody's good with how it is, then go with it,
I understand what you're saying, Mike. I'm thinking if we have different rates, then all of a sudden people have to think of, am I going to save $2 by going in the dirt lot or save it here? As opposed to everybody pays the same, which means everybody's going to take the best spot they can. And then just on the more crowded days, okay, it does cost the same. It's more crowded. That's sort of, we're not creating that conflict of premium lots, unpremium lot. It's just everybody will get the best spot available. But I understand it.
Your point on that would be you can create congestion, which is what you don't want to do, is where people pull in and they go, oh my God, it's $5 more here, I'm going to leave now. And they start circling around like you're saying. And then all of a sudden on a Saturday it becomes, we can do whatever. Sure. That's just our suggestion. And we can change it afterwards too also.
What do you think?
And I've looked at it both ways. I thought those two lots closest would be premium parking. And then we'll get into permits and overnight and have that discussion too. And then looking back at other parking lots, that 321 spaces is small. So I guess I can kind of see both ways. And definitely would say, whatever council wants to do. But yeah, when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, those are premium spots compared to a dirt lot. But I don't know.
How do you feel about like they're just taking over on the marina and all, just like adding in paid parking to your operation?
Obviously, no one likes to talk about paid parking.
Yeah, but that's what we're here for.
No, actually, now that I've been working with the companies, done the interviews, and have been involved with this, I'm totally for it. And I think there's going to be some growing pains where people are, they're getting used to it. It's kind of grumbly that they don't want to pay. But Colorado is growing so much. I mean, it's Morrison, Idaho Springs. I mean, I used to be the weekend warrior too, coming up here. And I know anywhere I go, I'm going to pay for parking now. It's unfortunate the way Colorado is. I don't think the rates are outrageous. I really like the turnover. I've heard it's better for restaurants, for local businesses to get people in and out of those stores and restaurants and turn tables. So yeah, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be part of it. But no, now that I've been involved with the process, we need to do it. And I think the other part of it too that I really like is the wayfinding. We need help with that. They're very, Interstate does a lot of customer service stuff where it's not just parking people, parking police. It's, hey, where's a great place to eat? Or, hey, can you guide me to unload my kayak? There's a customer service piece to it that I wasn't aware of with these businesses. So I think to kind of help marina staff guide people and educate people like, hey, if you're going to rig a sailboat, you need to be here. If you're going to just go drop a power boat in, you need to go there. So I really like the wayfinding and just having some extra personnel down there to help us guide people around.
And
so
do we plan on having full-time people in Frisco by you guys? Okay.
Yeah, the nice thing about us is we've got, we do Keystone, we do Breckenridge. We've got about 20 locations in Breckenridge. So we've got, we're having our season end party at Eric's Tuesday. We've got about 45 people coming. So we've got a real infrastructure in place and everybody knows how hard it is to get that here. So, and the other point, we've got a 24/7 customer care center. So literally we will take all of that off of the town. That's what we do in Breckenridge. That's what Shelby and Blue are all about. We're very responsive. The website is set up to be very helpful. So we're all about customer service. We're really about our people first and foremost. We understand Summit County. We realize if you got good people, you keep them, you motivate them, and you deliver. So that's what we're all about.
Drilling in on these, the rates, how are we feeling about starting here? We can always adjust things. We've seen the data we'll get from you guys out of the start will be pretty impressive. I think if we want to do tiered, we can start there. And if we're overwhelmed, I'm happy with what's on
I think we need to introduce it
Yeah,
and get
that's
get
fine.
people comfortable
Yep.
first.
So with what's proposed here to start.
Yeah, I would just chime in. The simpler, the better. And, I think we should ease into it. So not overcomplicate it right now.
My experience has been you guys are very good about warnings. So I assume there's a cooperative level where we will ease into it with warnings, even though it's a revenue sharing. So you're on board with.
Yeah, our whole goal is for people to understand the system, like in Breckenridge, and use the system properly. So, our signage is. Yeah, so, for us, violations are not fun and they're a pain in the butt. So we like people to understand the system, whether it's through the website or people or signage. That's a goal.
Next up on the question of okay. Holiday rates and major events, making adjustments there, obviously probably safe for Memorial Day at this point, since that'll be the start. How do council feel about fluctuating rates for peak times?
I do support that.
I thought we just did that, so.
All right, yeah, we can, if that was bulked in, so I was just going through the questions to make sure that Logan's following. We're good with that, or? It's like
Yeah,
4th of
I'm all
July
for-
weekend's gonna be.
The
could
idea
be-
is monetizing
Yeah.
the space, so, and if the philosophy is it's because it's at a premium, because we've got there, then it follows then that on ultra busy weekends, you should continue that to monetize it even more. So in my world, I think you could pick some weekends and try it this year and then see if whatever that rate increase is, do it. Because, but again, I don't know that there's going to be, the pricing is going to create displacement, but I think you want to think about that. I mean, we know the parking has been full.
Sorry, are you talking about, we've got a 10 and 15. Are you talking about going to like a 20 or 25 on holiday weekends? Is that what?
No, just what was
Or just
proposed.
the 10 and
Yeah.
So
I think there's two different
Yeah.
discussions. there. Okay, so there's the 10 and the 15, and then there's also, so I'll give you what I would suggest. Idaho Springs hasn't done that, but they're gonna do it this year for the first time. And Idaho Springs were 2 years in. So they decided now that for July 4th, they're gonna go with a peak rate. But first, what they did is what you said, keep it simple initially. But we can totally do it. So like if July 4th, you wanted to go $20 flat rate, we can totally do that. We communicate well in advance. It's up to you. It's really your choice.
To not to do it, aside from the first year, the keep it simple argument, which is fine, but I mean, people who are here for the first time don't know. I mean, all they do is going to walk into some parking paradigm and they're going to have to respond to it. So whether it's 75 cents a half an hour or $1.50, it matters not. I think you might, the counter argument might be from a branding perspective, that all of a sudden Frisco's gotten really expensive. But you've got plenty of time to go down that road. I think the next council can certainly address that, but I would support it, but I think it's a good plan either way.
I do see it potentially being a burden on locals. People who are using the marina and all, they can walk and they can ride their bike, or they have to pay more just because it's a busy weekend and,
Why are you going down there?
yeah. I'm good with going with the flat fee for now, and if we raise it, we raise it, but you do as we see fit.
I think I'm hearing support for trying to looking at your question on number 3 there, Logan, on the staff report. It's increased for major holidays. See how it goes.
I don't, everybody complains when they come back from bed. It's $35 or $30. So I don't want that level of higher on our.
They stop doing the bill.
But I don't, as we introduce this, I just think, but I'd like to punt this question down the road a little bit. Let's see what we're hearing before we start establishing something. So that's all.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't quite hear all of you, but I don't know, I may be in the minority, but I would leave it a flat rate for now. I think even on peak weekends, I would hate our visitors to feel like we're price gouging them and that they're no longer welcome here. I think that easing into it is a good idea, but if I'm in the minority, then that's fine.
Reevaluate, so the first few weeks go soft approach. Parking passes is the next question on here. 80 passes is roughly 25% of our parking spaces. Question is, how many do we want to feel like we want to sell? Do we want to still do parking passes? Sell some of the lottery, or how do we want to do that? And the professional advice in the staff packet is no more than 25% of our spaces, correct? That's that number. So,
and these are not guaranteed spaces. It's just a season pass.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So just to give you a little bit of framework, so Breckenridge used to have for the ski resort a season pass, and they've eliminated it just because of so every Saturday people could get a space, right? Even though they had the pass, right? So the reality is that your demand is so crazy on Saturdays, Sundays, and weekends that those people aren't guaranteed a space. They're not going to get a space. So it kind of almost defeats the whole and creates a lot of undue frustration. The counter to that is Keystone has a rate of what,
550.
550 for the pass, and they sell only 75.
75 to 100.
Yeah, of them. So you can use economics, or you could do a lottery system. You just have to be cognizant of you can't guarantee a space, so that becomes a problem.
This is $400, and it's a similar thing. You're not guaranteed a space, but you can, wherever you can find a space, you got. And that's wholly worth it for anybody who's local. Anybody who hasn't bought that, like, I'll see you later because I'm parking up front.
That's 20 days.
But
Covers $20 parking. 20 days of parking is your break even.
Is your break even, right? Yeah, that's what that would be. And we need to figure out how to offer this to our marina people or boat people and or who, right? Is it just gonna be anybody in town, like I'm gonna buy a parking space so I can go hang out at the beach, right? I really think there's more of a need for for people using boats and
That's what I thought. Yeah.
doing that, instead of me going to use the beach, because I can ride my bike to go to the beach, and I will. But I really think we got to offer something to the marina boat people personally.
That's where I was at. Offered to the slip holders, I think.
First,
First, and I'm
something.
just kind of curious what that, where you land on the rate, so you just have to.
Does that include rack holders? That's something
There's as well, anyone that rents space from the marina, I think it'd have to be pretty fair across the board.
But I won't take a parking pass.
So you can always create more if you feel like they're underutilized or not compromising. The overall parking efficiency, you can always release some more at some point. It seems like a great benchmark to start. What would the suggested rate be based on, pass rate be based on your parking rates?
Yeah, so if you're talking, $15 or $10 all day ticket, we're thinking around $350. I guess the issue you get into, if you're gonna limit to 25%, which is probably what you should do, how do you decide who's gonna get one and who's not, based on, how many slips there are? I'm not sure how many slips there are. and how many-
50-ish slips, yeah, 50, some moorings, a few hundred rack spaces.
Right.
So it's.
Do you have a lottery or how do you work that, right? So that's the thing. You always have to be really careful because you still want to have space for the public, right? So that's that trade-off.
I'm not very supportive of this piece of it. I think the expectation that there's a guaranteed spot, no matter how much you communicate it, is there. And you get to the end of the season, somebody couldn't park 4 Saturdays, they want their money back. And now what? So this one's a slippery slope for me, but I could go either way.
I'll say I'm a pass holder at Clack Plaza up at Brett. It's made it very clear to me that I don't have a guaranteed spot.
Okay.
So I kind of don't worry about it. Again, messaging is key.
Okay.
Frustration is real. But that's what you're buying into. If you want to buy a guaranteed spot, we're certainly going to be after a lot more than $300.
Modify your behavior to get the most efficiency out of your pass that you can, so be there. So
But personally, I like having the idea of a season pass available for our slip and rack holders. Without a guarantee of a spot.
So we're in support of the passes. So I think that part we'll do is the 25% to the 80 passes. Is that a number council's comfortable with?
I think that's reasonable.
We have, modeling off of Clack Placer, I get an email saying, do you want to apply? The deadline is this, and there's a lottery.
Yep.
At least that would give us an indication of our numbers. right?
Copper is not a lottery. I think anybody can buy them.
First come, first serve, and they're capped. They're
Yeah.
capped.
Oh, it is capped.
Yeah,
The-
I
the-
thought that they
okay.
had
Because they
changed
sell
it.
out.
Yeah,
They sell out.
yeah.
Capped.
And
Yeah.
capped, okay.
Yeah.
And granted, that's, how many thousands of spaces does Copper have? I don't know, in comparison, where this is a much smaller number.
And when you facilitate the sale of those, right?
Yeah, it's all
So-
online on the website.
So if you were to open it up at a certain time, and say passes become available at this point in time, and they sell out, they just sell out as fast as they sell out. And that's that. You can do that too. People used to buy concert tickets that way. It's way better.
We spent a lot of money for that.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, I would say,
Cut through it out there.
one, I think we've already, I don't see slip holders as being any special use group in this area. I think the people going to the playground are going for the same reason as the slip holder. And I think giving them anything added seems a little odd to me. I think I'd be comfortable on the pass side of opening up to either Frisco or Summit County residents And anybody who rents space, be it a rack or a slip for the lottery or first come, first serve. I don't know how we do that and kind of meet those criteria. But carving things out for slip holders or boat owners, I think it's the people's park. It's for everyone down there. They've got no special rights just because they have a boat floating in the water.
Well, they
For those-
pay for that
Yeah, and
boat
they pay
floating
for their
in the
boat, yeah.
water.
Yep. And if I go down and
But then they don't have necessarily the access for what they pay for.
what do they have to
I mean,
access?
that's
The
their
boat's in the water. They've got the benefit of having the slip in the water and their boat in the water. So I think opening up to anybody who has a rack or a slip and either Frisco locals or Summit County locals, I'd be all for it. If we were going to limit who gets them, or I'd say let's not do passes at all. Personally.
I would say not Summit County. I would say Frisco only, because I think we could easily do 25% of just out of Frisco. That's what I would say. I also think that slip holders actually have more vested in the area than
Yeah, I would
anybody
say
else.
they tend to be on their boats longer than a kayak cruise. I think it's reasonable to offer them that access because of the investment they have in the marina. And we heard that, I think, quite a bit from the slip holders themselves. And to what degree you want to discount that, I won't argue with that, but I think they're vested in the success of the marina, and I think their usage tends to support a discounted parking rate because they spend so much time down there. And ultimately, if you buy it money, they spend a lot of money down there, and they bring people to the marina who do also spend money. So, and I mean, if you don't compartmentalize this into a conversation about just revenue stream, you look at that symbiotic approach, and I think that's in here in terms of, and you're gonna have this conversation about to what degree do you validate parking? I would tend to not support the validating parking, but support the people, this user group that does spend more time down there, give them an opportunity for a discounted parking rate. I think there's a reasonable argument there that supports that.
Where are we at with that
I don't
then?
know.
Yeah, Rick or Melissa
Rick or
too.
Melissa, I'd love to hear your thoughts on passes and who. I think we're in favor of the passes. I think we're now in the. we should have
I
access.
could go either way. I don't have strong feelings about it. I mean, I can, I think a priority for Frisco residents, but I mean, just splitting hairs over who gets the priority, I think it just kind of opens up, things that we can't predict. And so, as I always say, I would keep it simple and perhaps the town of Frisco priority, but beyond that, I think that's where I'm at.
Could I add just one more point with that? So I am getting a lot of feedback from some of our slip holders and customers in general. And they're at the point where like, hey, we want designated parking or we want free parking and understand that that's not going to happen. I think by offering these passes that they're still paying for is kind of an easy first step. Like you're not going to get designated. You're not going to get free. But if you get this pass, it's going to help you. You don't have to log in or, check your parking every weekend. You just go in and get your spot. So I am for it, just the way it's presented, just because I think it's a good kind of a soft starting point for people that are renting down there.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
I'm trying to wrap my head around if I've got a boat in the marina and I'm going to spend the night, what that looks like. They're just going to pay the maximum price per day per time they spend the night down there is what I'm coming to in my head. So I think the softer rollout would be, to offer the passes, and I think prioritizing the slip holders makes some sense, at least for the initial implementation.
Support for rack and slip holder priority. One? Yeah.
Do first come, first serve or lottery?
Yeah, first, that was the next. Yes, to which one, Dan?
First come, first serve.
First come,
First
first
come.
serve. Council good with that?
Slips and moorings, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
First come, first
Thank you.
serve.
Got it.
TD passes.
Yep.
So what we, we'll have to figure out the software a bit on that, but probably what would happen, Shelley, what do you think they would register with you initially? Have a proof, some sort of. Right. Right.
Or maybe have a list that what you guys could supply us with the list.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It would just be like the same as ours.
And then we would just create a website and they go
Okay.
on sale at 10 o'clock. Go for it. And we'd only give those people access. We've done that before.
Heard a little bit in there, but any interest in doing any other discounts in year one for parking?
I've got
Everyone
one.
tends at the Island Grove.
What's that? Melissa, go ahead.
I was just gonna say for, educational groups or, anything related to kids. I mean, at the end of the day, the marina for me is a place for kids and families to gather, not to make, I get it that, we're interested in a revenue generation here, but, I really want to prioritize kids and families and people that, benefit from that amenity. So I'd be interested in that discount or complimentary parking for, groups of kids that are visiting Frisco, things like that.
Manage that or implement that? Validate who's- Yeah. I understand what you're getting at, but I think I'm more in the, that seems like a difficult management task. Call one kid.
I mean, can they just be validated or something like that? Have you ever seen that?
I think we were working, like if we're working with like the Frisco Fun Club, I think we've got options there, but I think just to group up for the weekend with the family is the same thing. We're trying to capture whether they're boating or going to the beach or otherwise, in my opinion, with parking.
Water rescue class or something,
Yeah.
some special use I
Yeah.
could see, but I don't know how you would
Yeah.
regulate that.
I'm sure there's a way to adjust it.
Yeah.
What we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten parking codes that work in the machines and Breck, it's great. So not hearing full any
Shelby's
support
email.
for any discounts, so. I think Logan, that's the end of our list.
If I could,
Yeah,
just
and then we've buttoned up on a lot of time constraints here,
a
so.
lot of time constraints. What is our plan for truck and trailer parking there? As people, because just before we get into it, these are people who are not paying for the marina. They're coming, dropping their boat in for the day, leaving their truck and trailer right there, and then they pull it out and they leave, right? They're not supporting, the people who are day boaters are not supporting as marina slip holders and or mooring people. So I just want to know what your thoughts on that.
So, yeah, that's a great question too. So, looking at trucks and trailers, a truck or a tow vehicle with a trailer, having a higher parking rate, paying not crazy, but paying a little bit more for that trailer. And then somehow, that was one of the questions, didn't show up on the slide, but the B1 parking lot, right now, we can use it for 24-hour. Well, the way it is now, you can do overnight parking there with a truck and the trailer. So we were thinking keep using that overnight lot. But then wondering, that's a good question. Do we do permits? Do we do stickers? Let them know that. But the rate would be higher for that truck and trailer. So that would be.
I mean, I think
one-
that's a
one
fair
part of
answer.
it,
The
yeah.
rate would be higher for them.
Yeah.
And that's- And they, what's that?
I'm,
Should we charge it?
All right, anything else, Logan, you need on this?
I guess, oh,
Just to
sorry.
answer that question quickly. So if somebody takes 2 parking spaces, they're responsible generally, the norm is they pay for 2 fees. So they're responsible for 2 fees. If there is an area that specifically you want to have for trailers and trucks, we can have that as a separate zone and a separate rate. And put a premium on it.
Separate area, but
Yeah, you zone it, yeah.
When we,
And the
when we go
double-
through and do the compliance, we can check to make sure they paid the appropriate.
Forward to it.
Okay.
Good adventure. And Council, are you good if we move the next work session item to agenda item number 3 is new business? I actually got 10 minutes.
well, by the way,
Oh,
I mean, really thorough. And that was great. Good job.
Weird,
I
like,
think about that.
Or just like. Actually, Rick's eating dinner too. Most of it's Firehouse was. Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Frisco Town Council. We'll start off this evening with public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment may do so now. Please be topic specific for anything that is not on this evening's agenda. Introduce yourself and your address for the record and limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. If you are online, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself and I will recognize you. Or if anyone's in council chambers who'd like to make public comment. Seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment. On to mayor and council comments. I'd like to kick it off and just say thank you to everyone who participated and voted in the election, who ran for seats. Congratulations to those who were elected into new roles or continuing for 4 more years. Mr. Held, congratulations. I think it's always great to see such interest in having a full roster of candidates. I think it makes for a better process and a better conversation and brings more ideas to the table. And we had a very good turnout compared to what we've had in some years past. And I appreciate everyone taking the time to do that. It's one of the most important things we do. And as I've definitely learned, local government is the most important. This is where things get done that do affect your daily life on a regular basis. So I'm looking forward to working with our new council members and appreciate all of those who did run and the time that it takes to do that. So thank you all, as well as Deborah and the election judges. And Callie, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that none of us know about, and we appreciate all of that. Other comments?
I want to do the same thing, extend gratitude to everybody who participated in the process and encourage them to continue. To David Rowling, thank you so much for the time you put in, and hopefully if you're on the call tonight, look forward to hearing more from you, and please find ways to continue to stay involved. Your contribution and your insights have been valuable and appreciated, and hopefully you continue. And I appreciate all the passion of everybody who ran, and hope you see that kind of that's what I'm looking for. You continue to contribute within the community, and your energy stays with us. So thank you very much.
To follow up with that, Dan, yeah, and we've got planning commission appointments coming up, and I would think that's a great way to continue to show your interest and involvement in planning commission. It's proved to be a valuable experience for those who have sat on the commission and then joined council afterwards. So I'd highly recommend that for all who are interested. I think applications for that are due April 15th. So drop off your planning commission application, then do your taxes or something like that. We're all set. Right? Similar day, similar time. Any other council comments? So we're gonna close council comments, and then I assume there's no additional staff updates. Thank you. Next up will be the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move the approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Councilmember Held. Is there discussion on the motion? And then can you call the question, please?
Aronson?
Yes.
Burley?
Yes.
Callan? Hell?
Yes.
Incan?
Yes.
Sherburne?
Yes.
Mortensen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is new business, and this is agenda item number 1. This is resolution 22-14, a resolution for the award of contract for owner's representative services, Slopeside Hall with Diversified Consulting Solutions of Denver, Colorado. Open up the public hearing. Turn over to staff.
Mr. Mayor, it's Addison.
Here he is. Hi, Addison. I was looking around and then your voice bellowed through the halls. Welcome, Addison. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Town Council. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you, exciting endeavor that we could have, pending your approval. In my discussions with other members of town staff, we felt it better to go out to RFP to seek owners representation services for 619 Granite, which is now Granite Park Housing Project, in addition to Slopeside Hall. This contract is directly related to Slopeside Hall, so I will just speak to that. But this is a very exciting opportunity to work with a company who has so many years of experience, especially on the municipal side. That was something that really, drew our attention in. They actually worked right down the road from where you all are sitting currently, and were very instrumental in seeking, and getting that project to final completion for Summit Fire and EMS for the new Ops Center building. So they have experience up here in Summit County. They have experience in the high country. And like I just mentioned, tons of municipal experience. So, my memo is in your report. So I'll just turn it over for council questions if there are any.
Specific questions for Addison. None. Open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment on this agenda item? Oh, you're good. I just can't see everybody, so I didn't look. Seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment and back to council discussion. I think it's a great idea. I'm looking forward to freeing you guys up and getting a little time back on your plates to do other things, Addison. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution 2214, the award of contract for owners representative services, Slopeside Hall.
Been moved to approve agenda item number 1 by Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Aronson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, can you call the question, please?
Burley,
Yes.
Fallon,
Yes.
Health,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next up on this evening's agenda is agenda item number 2. This is a discussion of potential code amendments to facilitate workforce housing development. I will open up this public hearing, turn over to staff in just a second. Welcome, Don. But just as we were hoping to do this will be more of a work session type discussion in light of our conversations last meetings about facilitating more open work session conversation. I have asked a few folks, the Richmonds, and to be here as well as maybe, yeah, when we get to that point, as they kind of help facilitate bringing this conversation forward. So they're kind of the per our work session conversations, I think we're trying to stay true to that idea. So that's why you've seen them joining us. So thank you for that. And Don, it's all yours.
Sure. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, Town Council. So this is a request, and normally this would be in a work session, but since it was rather full this evening, we've shifted it to new business. The idea here is, so this is a request by a property owner, Andrew Richardson and his wife, who own a property at 521 Pickens Street. They have also applied to the town for a road vacation of the unused right-of-way of South 6th Avenue adjacent to that property. And as part of their overall plan for the property, they're looking at the cabin housing code regulations as an idea to facilitate potential additional workforce housing units. Because this is a potential pending application that will ultimately come to town council, I'm not going to go into the specifics of that particular request because you will have to consider it as part of a quasi judicial hearing at some point in time. But rather than that, just I'm going to focus on the cabin housing regulations themselves, as well as the requested code change. As far as process for an amendment to the development code, typically we do bring those to town council first to get direction, because this is to make sure that it is consistent with town council's strategic plan goals and vision, and before we set forth on these code amendments. so after the council work session and provides direction to staff on whether or not we should pursue this code amendment, it'll then go to the town planning commission for a public hearing, and they will make a recommendation, which will then ultimately come back to town council for consideration or under an ordinance, because it will be an amendment to the town code. So what the cabin housing regulations are, they were adopted a dozen or so years ago, originally. And the intent there and the idea there was to preserve the small cabin feel, the original mining cabins that were around town. And with that, it gave an incentive to property owners to give a 1.5 times or a 50% increase in the number of units that could be permitted in exchange for building smaller homes. So right now, the regulations have a maximum size limitation of 1,200 square feet for the first or for half of the units on the property, and 1,000 square feet for the other half of the units that may be on a property. The cabin housing has only been used once in Frisco in the past 12 years. And that's actually a property right over here on Galena at 110, 112 Galena or so, next to the States on Galena. And if you look at it on its face, it probably doesn't really look like a cabin or a series of cabins. So I don't know that that project fully met the intent of the cabin housing regulations as it was originally intended. So I think the concept is maybe good. I think the reasons it hasn't been used is the typical developer, at least nowadays, would say, okay, well, I'd rather build a 4,000 square foot house rather than have 2 small houses, because they'll get a heck of a lot more money out of the 4,000 square foot home or the unlimited size home. So I don't know that it's been the most effective tool in creating that small or maintaining that original mountain character of these mining cabins, or in developing workforce housing. One other thing with the cabin housing regulations is once you have a development of at least 5 units, at least one of those has to be deed restricted to 100% AMI and for the local workforce. So there's a few things about the cabin housing development regulations that could make it very desirable and attractive. However, it just hasn't been used for that purpose since it's really been adopted. So with that, Mr. Richmond has proposed an amendment to the cabin housing regulations, which would serve to facilitate his particular program. The first would be to increase the allotted home size from 1,200 square feet to 1,500 square feet. So that would be a 20% increase in the home size. Is 1,500 square feet. What is a cabin? I guess is ultimately going to be that conversation when you get to that point as well. So half of the homes could be 1,500 square feet. The other half would be limited to that, would also get an increase to 1,200 square feet in size. There was also a request to increase the maximum height allowed on the property from 20 feet to 30 feet. In subsequent conversations with Mr. Richmond, he's been amenable to maybe reducing that, because a 30-foot increase would be fairly significant. That'd be a 50% increase on the current allotted height. And again, at that point, are you really looking at a cabin? 30-foot tall structure maybe is not emblematic of the historic mining cabins in Frisco. And then finally, there was a request that these home sizes and these allotments and increases in sizes would only be permitted in a cabin housing development if all of the properties had what we're calling an occupancy only deed restriction, which is the deed restriction we're using for housing helps and other programs. It's not the standard deed restriction that's required for bonus density as it's currently written in the code. So this would be another definition of what a deed restricted housing unit could be, and a covenant in Frisco could be. So there's a number of moving pieces in there. I'd certainly like to have a discussion on this with council and invite Mr. Richmond to participate in this as well, so he could share his concepts. As staff, as we're looking at this, I think that our position is that maybe a better approach maybe to consider something else, and that would be a workforce housing overlay, where something like this or some of these concepts could be applied more broadly and on a more on a case specific basis. Right now, I think as presented, the modification for cabin housing, again, would probably be only really applicable to this one particular project. It wouldn't really be effective anywhere else. And yet we'd be adding this into the code that as something that could be used everywhere else. So again, the workforce housing overlay concept might, if we were to pursue that, might be an opportunity to apply something on a lot more broad basis that might be more applicable in a number of other cases. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Since it is kind of more of an informal work session, if you'd like to invite Mr. Richmond up for conversation now, that might be a good way to go as well.
I'm sorry, I just have a
That's all right.
question. Can you, the overlay thing just confuses the heck out of me.
Mhm.
And I know we have a historic overlay. Can you just dive into that a little bit so that I have a better understanding of?
So I think the concept would be there'd be some very basic parameters to qualify to be able to apply that workforce housing overlay. It would be as rezoning, essentially. You're putting a new zoning designation onto that property. We've got one at the historic park. We've got one at the Deming Cabin project that happened a few years ago. They utilized the workforce housing overlay in order to get some relief from various code requirements. So in exchange for this, a developer could come and say, I would like to apply for the workforce housing overlay. The criteria that which have not been developed yet, because I haven't gotten that far, could be, okay, X number of % of the additional density you get or that you're getting has to be at X AMI. And that could be variable depending on the type of development that it was or what the specifics parameters of the development were. So I think it would be another tool that could be used in order to maybe facilitate some additional housing projects.
We're literally designating a new zone on the map. This is an overlay district that they can apply for based on certain criteria. Okay, thank you.
And it's very similar to a PUD.
Yeah.
It's actually maybe more similar to a PUD than it would compared to the historic overlay district, because a PUD can be applied in almost any area, whereas historic overlay, you have to have kind of maybe a historic structure on the property. So
thank you.
It's what we did for Foots Rest, isn't that?
Right. Yeah.
May I?
Yeah. Work session, fire away.
Okay. Thanks, Don. As somebody that was part of the team that actually wrote the cabin zoning rule, this is interesting. We're much further down the road. And this was actually when we were doing the development across from the elementary school. I don't know what it's called.
South End Village.
Thank you, South End Village. And that was 15 years ago, I would say.
2006, I think.
So, the idea behind it was, at the time, there were presentations coming in or proposals for that project that were one big building, and it was high density. And we were all interested at the time as locals in that people want to live in their own house. They don't want to live in the mountains on top of each other, right? This is different nowadays. I believe it's very different. And especially as we're talking, potentially raising density for workforce housing, I almost see the cabin zoning rule not even remotely applying to any of this. And you're absolutely right in the workforce housing overlay. And that would work along with our committee as we're meeting with developers, right? We need the tools to be able to offer developers who are willing to do more workforce housing than they're forced to do. We can have all of these concessions in there, right? So, as you're saying that, the cabin zoning wasn't, has maybe been used once in that time, maybe that's just not the tool for this. And as you're talking with the workforce housing overlay. So it is wholly important that we actually do something like this overlay in order to make it possible for more workforce housing to come in. I don't personally see the need to change the cabin zoning rule in order to allow for something that's beyond what it was originally intended on, but it's also just not as fitting nowadays. You know, nowadays we have more people and we're looking for higher density for our workforce. And so like, it just doesn't apply, you know? And so, you know, I think working along with this committee who are meeting with developers, that's where we're going to end up identifying all of the markers for the overlay, for the workforce housing overlay, which would be throughout. You know, so that's my part of it. In any case, excuse me, the planning commission should absolutely weigh in on, you know, how they feel about it, because again, our you know, appointed group of experts in the area, we should definitely take their input there too. But I'd say that's where I'm at with this whole thing. Like we should end up moving in a new direction.
Cabin housing can be applied in any zoning district, right? So RL, RM. So
Yeah,
so
any
you-
residential zone
You've
district.
got a lot that it's just a multiplier that is assigned to whatever density is already assigned to that, you know, whatever zoning district it's in, right? So these could pop up anywhere. And the cabin housing dimensional standards that are there are, for example, significantly different than they are in the RL district. Right. For example.
Yes.
Right? And I guess that's where, in terms of considering the specific ask in terms of this application with regards to changing the cabin housing, is that I think you run the risk of really starting to compromise some neighborhoods from a dimensional standard standpoint, especially if you start talking about 30-foot units on a 5-foot setback in an RL district. It fundamentally changes the character of the neighborhood. And I think you could probably go around and around on what you think cabin is or ought to be. Yeah. So, and I don't think that's a solution, but, you know, we've talked about this in terms of the idea of a housing overlay district and how it allows us to be maybe more performance oriented instead of having to work off a prescriptive set of requirements. And as this is developed, I think that's important, because I think this is the kind of project that would be excited to hear more about. I mean, I really like to hear from you in terms of the particular circumstances, and probably today's not the time to evaluate that particular project. But I know the committee would really love to have that conversation, because this is the kind of interesting idea that fosters, maybe we don't exactly dial it in the way that was suggested, but it really informs the conversation about the overlay district and how elastic it needs to be in some regards to take unique applications on unique sites with unique conditions and make it work, you know? So not sure how that's going to happen yet with regards to this application, but the overlay district, the way it's applied, and in terms of, you know, I can't really speak to equivalence between how the overlay district and a PUD versus historic overlay. I know historic overlay must have some qualifying criteria underneath it, which would be some historical element that's to be salvaged. Well, in the workforce housing overlay district, that qualifying criteria ought then be substantial or totally workforce capacity, and therefore it qualifies it for this overlay and these development considerations, I would think. Whether it's substantially or totally could be, you know, again, in terms of that prescriptive versus performance, I think goes to the degree that you can consider relaxing or modifying those development standards. But this is, and thank you for bringing this forward, because this has to catalyze this conversation about moving beyond the prescriptive elements of the code into something that allows these to move forward. It's obvious this is a beneficial and productive development. We've got to figure out a way to accommodate it. And the other thing that continues to come up is this growing gap between what's in the current code in terms of deed restrictions and 100% AMI, because it's just not penciling out. It doesn't work. So we've got to address that regardless anyway. Whether it's a process to evaluate, or that menu of deed restrictions that you can bring to bear on a certain property. And that's always going to be a function, I think, of our investment and our desire to keep it within an AMI range. I know we're running into this in peak one, where units that were built and sold at a certain AMI percentage right now are appreciation capped well below that entry AMI rate in terms of the original sale. And we've got to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's a big piece, I think, of making it work on the development side, is having a lot of flexibility on the deed restrictions themselves. I know we have a couple of good sets, and the Housing Helps 2.0 deed restriction is a good one, I think. But again, I think it's more of a function of how much money we put into a project, which is, again, that last piece in terms of getting a lot of these things to pencil out, is where in that formula of housing overlay, once you get past development standards, then you do as much as you can. What's the last piece in terms of bringing that capacity into play? And at the end of the day, it just could be dollars. You write a check. So, but that's why this overlay district has to be. And it's going to be, I don't know, grabbing a tiger by a tail, I guess, to some degree. It's not going to be easy, I think, to systematically come up with something. I think there has to have in it the capacity to bring something and bring select elements to a project in a performance-based way that delivers a product. That's as far as I got with it. All right.
I mean, I look at it, you brought two very distinct issues to the table. Workforce overlay, yeah, let's look at it. Seems like a good idea. What that has to do with Mr. Richmond's proposal, I truly don't understand. But my point to Mr. Richmond, when I was reading through, I kind of had I don't get it. Because if the whole reason to request larger buildings is to make the project more feasible, we can make it more feasible just by giving you money. We have 5A money. We now have short-term rental excise tax money. And if you just want to say, I'll build these cabin units under the existing zoning, but hey, council, or hey, town, if I deed restrict it, will you give me money to make the project work? Please bring that to the table. And then we don't have to change the code on the cabin thing. You make the reasonable return on the development. And then we'll talk about workforce overlays. But that's why I kind of don't see where increasing the size of these cabin units. And I immediately look, if it's a 1,500 feet, basements don't count. We now have a 3,000 square foot cabin. And it's not just this parcel, it's to anybody who wants to build these things. So I would love to encourage the product built as a by right plan with a town subsidy and make it work.
I feel like a good segue to maybe hear. I don't know who all is coming up, but you're all on.
Sit or stand.
Yeah. Just need to be, if you're sitting, the microphones, just bend them in. Because I think what Andrew is saying is important, is that there are a few different steps here, and it kind of goes to what Dan was saying is the cabin zoning right? Is the historic overlay right? Or is there just something we can make happen now? And I'll add in some of my own thoughts on the cabin overlay, which I think might relate to what Andy's saying, but yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. And I got to thank Don. He's been amazing throughout this whole thing. And especially considering how short-staffed they are, I really, really appreciate it. So I want to start by saying I've heard this a few times. We don't know what a cabin is. I can tell you what a cabin is. That where we live is 1935 miners cabin. This is a cabin. And the reason that I really like the cabin housing idea and sticking with this with the amendments that we proposed is kind of what Don referred to, and that is that cabin housing hasn't been used. It hasn't been incentivized. And that's what we're trying to do here. And I think Don clarified it, but everything that we're trying to offer here would only be available to somebody who is doing this with a local restriction. So that would really make this seem like an attractive option to build all of a sudden. 1,500 square feet is not 1,000 square feet. And that makes it a little bit easier to say, well, maybe we can do this for local housing. I can absolutely say that 1,500 square feet, if that is built in my neighborhood, will still be the smallest house in my neighborhood in Frisco there, and in probably most neighborhoods in Frisco. Going to your point, Andrew, we actually don't want money. The reason that I want to do this, yes, I want to do this because I can see the benefit of for myself on this parcel, but I can see the benefit for Frisco on this. We are trying to get a vacation of a town right away, and I think that this could be a model for how the town looks at any vacations going forward. What we're trying to offer is we are going to bring 4 local housing units for one vacation. And we don't need money to do it. All we need is to say, we want locals to live here. And I'm not talking about workforce housing. I'm talking about local housing. I don't want this to be transitory workforce. Okay, we come in, maybe we stay a little bit, but because there's a resale cap or because there's an AMI cap, we sell, we get out and we leave the county. I don't want to see that. I want to see locals coming in, making a home here, participating in the housing market in a way that lets them stay here in Frisco. Like I was lucky enough to grow up here and come back. So that is my point on all of this is I think using the cabin housing with these specific amendments could encourage that, could encourage locals to participate in the housing market and stay here. And as to Dan's point about the different sort of local restrictions, that's exactly what we want to propose here. We've seen, you all know the problems in the Peak 1 restrictions better than I have. And when I moved back here and was starting to look for a place, Peak 1 was not an option for my wife and I because we had to thread the needle of having enough money to make a down payment, but not having enough to get over the AMI cap. It was basically impossible. So what I'd like to see and what I've proposed in this is based off the Vail deed restriction that they're doing as part of the Indeed program. And I got to say, I read that over, and as much as I hate to give Vail credit, I love what they've done here. They made it 75%. You have to earn 75% of your money in the county, in a business with a business license in the county. And I'd be even happy to close it down into the 10-mile basin, whatever the council thinks might be better. But that also helps us say we're providing housing for locals, not gig workers who maybe work, 75% of their hours here, not people who bring their money in from outside, people who work at a business in this county. That alone will provide a certain measure of downward pressure on the price. It will not be a market price. So that coupled with the fact that, as I said, even at 1,500 square feet, this is going to be the smallest house in the neighborhood. These are going to naturally be more affordable, but let myself, whoever else is buying into these, participate in this housing process. And the one more point I wanted to make was what Don referred to as, well, developers see this and, okay, I don't want to use cabin housing because I can just build a 4,000 square foot home and make more money off of that. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, trying to get away from with this code amendment. And that is make it easier for people like me, people who don't want to make $1 million, who just want to build a house to live in and have neighbors that are locals to live next to them. Make the code work for people like us instead of people who want to build a 4,000 square foot home. I mean, I saw what happened to the Johnson house just a few doors down. They didn't have to jump through very many hoops to build those duplex of 3,000 square feet. And I'm willing to jump through these hoops so that next time around, it's a lot easier for somebody to build some local housing. So that's my overall thoughts. I'm happy to answer any questions, but my dad, Mark, also has some thoughts on the local housing here issue, and I think he'd probably like to speak up.
If you don't mind, thank you. Mark Richmond, also a resident of Frisco, right down the street on Pitkin. And maybe some context about this application would help a little bit. First of all, Andy is a graduate of Frisco L and has a little guy that wants to go to Frisco L. So hoping we can make this work. The lot that Andy and Lauren, his wife back here, purchased is 7,000 square feet, so it's a non-conforming lot. The house is slightly into the setback, amazing in 1930s. They didn't quite get that survey right. So it's non-conforming structure and lot in the RL zone. Same for the folks who are participating in this application. The Lindroses on the other side, a non-conforming lot, too small on the other side of the 6th Ave right away. So this proposal would address, would make those lots, all the lots conforming. And I think it also should be noted that this project is bookended on each side by short-term rentals. So you guys know we're getting gentrified, we're getting hammered by short-term rentals. This is a way to put down a marker that we really do want locals and we want to work with you. And I want to just comment on some of the things Dan said and about the cabin zoning. I really think it offers some ways to make local housing, and I'm not going to use the term workforce, it's almost pejorative anymore, that you're if we're only designing housing for folks that income qualifying and appreciation restricted, we're not going to have a community of permanent residents that want to live here. We've got to have alternatives. And I think the housing for locals can benefit from cabin housing kind of restrictions in the whole RL zone. I'd love to see you guys allow cabin housing on every RL zone lot on the south side and not permit short-term rentals unless you're a primary resident. That's what I think we need. I think we need to gut up and say, no, you can't do short-term unless you're going to do, you're a primary resident. And so I'd like to, like we live next to the 4th Ave right away that's not going to be developed. We'd like to do something there. I think public-private partnerships are good. I don't want to do an accessory unit attached to our house. I want to do a separate home. And I think Andy's proposal is a benefit. It fits the cabin housing goals. And I would note other than supplying a diversity of small homes for locals, encouraging energy efficient structures is one of the goals. So their current home has lodge poles instead of rafters in the roof. They've worked for almost 90 years, but probably time for a new roof. It's got a few leaks, as you might imagine. An energy efficient dwelling has to somehow fit in this cabin concept. Why would we want to, you try and serve aesthetic goals over function and really energy efficiency? This should be part of the deal. So thank you. I'm just delighted to work on this and hope we can move it forward.
Yeah, so for background, and I think it's timely that we're having this discussion, is I had the option of an awkward shaped lot to purchase in Frisco and looked at in doing kind of the due diligence on it using the cabin zoning and worked with Don's department on what the potentials were. And because of the shape of the lot and what we were trying for, because I think a lot of what you're trying to do is our goal is workforce, people who are going to live here and they want a garage and they want something small and quaint, but it's very livable. And so for me, when I was looking at the cabin zoning, it was our biggest restriction in doing our due diligence, and we didn't obviously go through with that project, was more around the garage and the second floor square footage. And that limited us to saying this doesn't work for a livable house with not being able to have a garage and a full complete footprint on top of that based on the zoning, because it was a very awkward lot and a lot of other issues going on there. But so Andy, in working up to an odd question, I just say, like, can you walk through why does the 1,500 square feet, like, what does that benefit this development, the future of the cabin? I was just in Aspen, so I've seen cabins. I know what we can do with a cabin, but 1,500 square feet versus 1,200, where's that what's the extra 300 square feet actually get you that makes this a better development or better meet the goals of.
Absolutely. And Hunter, thanks for drawing me back into the garage issue. And we've gone back and forth. Jesse Johns, Ketteritz, who you might know, the main principal over at Range West with Bobby is the one who's hopefully going to be buying in the back lot of ours. And she has done just an amazing amount of work to really work on the site plans. And what Hunter's alluding to is a real issue, trying to figure out how to fit this amount of space with a garage, which in this climate, I mean, we got to have a garage if we're going to live here for the rest of our lives. So, which is the goal. But the way we came to 1,500 square feet is as Mark said, we have a new kid. If we're going to think about another one, it's our current house is 900 square feet, 960 square feet. If we add 200 square feet to that, our house is still tiny for 3 people. We're not trying to get at a 1,500 square feet plus 1,500 in the basement for 3,000 square feet. What we're looking at is what you're talking about, Hunter, and that's okay. If we have 1,500 square feet, and I'm trying to remember what it said, the second floor cannot exceed 70% of the housing. That way we can have a little bit of an upstairs. So maybe the ground floor is actually more like 1,500 or excuse me, 1,000 square feet. The upstairs allows us with 1,500 to put a 500 square foot, a bedroom upstairs or something like that, and then a little bit of a basement on it. It allows us to build more of a family residence rather than what we have now is wonderful for Lauren and I. It is already small for Lauren and Owen and I. So the 1,500 square feet we think allows us to better start a family, which is, or we hope should be the goal of trying to do local housing, cabin housing in Frisco here.
And I know, Melissa, go ahead. Saw you trying to get.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward, because I think what I'm hearing is really examining a project like this and your goals and your particular site. It's really shining a light on a lot of things that we should be talking about right now. And I'm not exactly sure what order to go in here, but let me just rattle off a few comments. In terms of cabin, right? I do live in Peak One neighborhood, and my house is a little over 1,600 square feet. It works for us, but it's tight. You know, I was trying to find my my blueprints. I can't pull them up right now, but I think I'm certain it's less than 30 feet high. And I think at the end of the day, it's less about the dimensions and it's more about the design. And when we look at this cabin zoning, it's very charming. It's very quaint. The one project that we do have in town is cool. I mean, it adds to the character of Frisco. We want more of that. We want, while density provides a solution on some level, in terms of units on top of one another, this style of development is very appealing, and a lot of locals would love to live in it. That being said, if our code doesn't work, if a developer cannot make a profit, and I totally appreciate your motives and I applaud that, but for most developers, if they can't turn a profit, they're not going to use it. And so I think where I land on this is that I really am not a proponent of changing our code per project, but I want to make this work for you in a more of a universal approach. And so I think putting it back on Don and staff to consider things like, how do we rewrite the cabin zoning to have more enticing incentives? How do we, do we have fee waivers? Do we just throw money at it? Do we, there's a whole number of ways that we can lower the cost for a developer and increase their profit and encourage this kind of thing. So I don't favor changing our code at this to this specificity for this project, but I do want us to examine the cabin housing, make some adjustments to it, Is it 1,200? Is it 1,500? I think none of us know. I think it depends on the design of the site. And so writing the code in a way that provides some flexibility, adaptability, so that somebody like you can come forth and utilize that code without being constrained, to such a fine degree. In terms of the affordable housing overlay, absolutely 100%. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I see the overlay as an overlay of the entire town, and where it can be used, on a project by project basis, more or less every piece of land within town limits has the option to look into that. So, and maybe Don, if I'm off on that, please let me know. And then I had one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh, thank you for bringing to our attention the deed restriction, because again, based on my own experience, and Dan mentioned this, thanks Dan for bringing that up, is the model is flawed. You all have heard me talk about AMI. It's arbitrary. It's set up so that people that do live in deed restricted housing, there is no climb out of that. My prediction is that in the next few years, maybe it'll take 5 years, maybe it'll take 10, we're going to need to re-examine that. And so moving away from that paradigm into something that makes more sense, like you brought up, the Vail Indeed program, I think is very, very smart at this point in time. Let's not go back on our ways and use broken models. And, the only thing I would say on that is we do need to make sure that people can't take advantage of our deed restriction and be making money in California and living here or whatever. And no STRs. I think that goes without saying. All deed restrictions must prohibit STRs. So I think that's it, but thank you so much for bringing this forth, because I think that it shined a light on so many things that we as a council need to talk about, or you guys need to talk about, but I'll follow in the news. So thank you.
I'll just clarify that it doesn't help your project, but our new Housing Helps 2.0 is essentially exactly the Vail Indeed. So we have that here. We have stolen it, adopted it.
It is there.
Yeah, we have it, and it's been utilized four times today. I just signed another one. So yeah, so it's working. So I guess some of the thoughts on this, there's other questions or anybody else wants to go on this is kind of to move things along is, do we want to consider these amendments? Do we want to think this is more fall in line of that workforce housing overlay to try to make this successful for this project and for all the other ones that the committee, the workforce housing committee group that we convened, and see if we can help expedite making some of these ideas of what a workforce housing overlay looks like? Or is there interest within council right now to look at adopting or modifying some of the cabin zoning as proposed and going that route and doing the workforce housing later? Overlay. I think we've got two pretty.
Hey, Hunter.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
So just my thoughts on it aren't too different than other folks, but the way I see the workforce housing overlay is, instead of having to look at different code amendments in the future, the workforce housing overlay would bring those exceptions or modifications with it. So we wouldn't have to be going back to the code as frequently. I get it. When we do, it's good stuff. But for the first several years I was on council, we rewrote the code, and then we immediately approved it and started rewriting it again. So I think this workforce housing overlay could be a really useful tool in the future, because if we obviously have some good code and we have some code that could use some work. So I think the workforce housing overlay is a tool that we can apply going forward. And I agree, anywhere in the town would be eligible for it. And then as far as the cabin housing, boy, I didn't realize that South End was our only model in town. And if something hasn't been used in this long, it certainly deserves another look. So I think looking at our cabin housing, and if we're hung up on a name, it might be just time to change the name. But I'm in a the same house as Melissa, and it's a great size for a family to live in. And I see where not including the garage makes sense in that situation, because it starts to limit things overall when you start adding that square footage in. So that's where I'm at. I think they're both good ideas to look at. And as far as prioritization, I'd say whichever one can get more projects going the fastest. Thanks.
Make one more statement on this. One more pitch to the council, and that is, to Rick's point, the amendments I proposed will get one project going immediately, mine. And if we're worried that cabin housing hasn't been working or hasn't been working as proposed, what's the harm in trying these 3 or 4 amendments that I put down to see if that does jumpstart something, to see if that does kick it off? That doesn't preclude the workforce overlay that everybody's been discussing later, but it does give another option for locals like myself or like my father or anybody who lives on a non-conforming lot or next to a site that's potential for a vacation or anything like that, to say, hey, I've got something new I can look at here that gives me a better option. And they can get going on that right now. I think that's my last point is yeah, if this doesn't preclude the other, we can get this moving right away, and it's just another tool in the toolbox to see if it works.
I'm still confused. Don't we have that tool in the toolbox? It's just not big enough for your desired size of a house.
Agreed. We have, well, I would argue we don't have that tool in the toolbox because the tool hasn't been used except for over on Galena there. So whatever the tool that I'm proposing, I can already say is going to result in 4 more local units than the tool that's currently in use has ever done before.
What you want to do is build 4 units that are, give or take, 1,500 square feet.
Well, and let me clarify on this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I guess this is where this is probably something that needs to see more information than just the theoretical. But if you're, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say at $500 a square foot, you're building a $750,000 house.
Well, so
and saying that's going to, and that's, by the way, just for the main, that's the 1,500 part. Do a finished basement, all the other things, those can multiply up. How's this turning into workforce housing without us writing a check anyway?
So a couple things that I want to clarify that I think maybe has gotten lost. The way that cabin housing is written right now, 1,500 square foot is the maximum for one house on the or one house on the units or on the parcel. So the way that I am actually proposing that this works is the one house can go to 1,500 square feet, and at least half of all of the other units have to be 12. I think I proposed 1,250 or lower. So we're actually, and with 4 units, that means that only one house can be at 1,500 square feet. All the rest needs to average out to 1,250 is how that would work. So 1,500 was the buzzword, but that would be my house, mine and my wife's house would get 1,250. Correct. And the other piece that's if we want to say 500 square feet, it's $750,000. You want to put a $750,000 house on the market in Frisco right now, the locals will be gobbling it up. I mean, that's how we're going to do local housing.
The issue I ran into when looking at this was the lot size could get by use 3 units under the cabin zoning with the setbacks that are allowed when you go to a cabin zoning setback. But to have this parking and everything else, that's where it was limited and it didn't work. But if a developer buys it, they can do 3 units to the roof all the way up, like we've seen everywhere else in town, without any of those limitations, and not have it kind of, we were trying to meet that feeling of 3 individual units separate from each other on a small lot together, because you get the setback bonus through this. So I think that's one of the handcuffs that the cabin zoning why more things aren't being taken advantage of like this, because the cabin or setback limits limit how many parcels per build you get per parcel versus go this route. And that's what it's like, some of these small tweaks. Keep it going, and I know you've been trying to say something.
No, I'm kind of confused too, but not that, so the cabin zoning could be used anywhere in a residential, right? I think you said that. So in asking the question, how many other lots could be available under cabin zoning? We're talking about anything that's developable, right? That's not, okay. So, and I'll just be really quick. I'm almost echo exactly what Melissa said, and that is, I like the idea. I support the cabin zoning idea. I do struggle when we change the code for one particular project. So I want to make sure that this, could apply all over the place. And in looking at a code amendment, I would want to make sure that, you brought forward very specific proposals that will work for your lot, but is that the right mix? So I'd want to look at it more broadly, but I'm totally open to it. And I love the not only are we getting the locals housing out of it, but we're also keeping that look and feel. And, just full disclosure, I'm in a 1,300 square foot peak one home, and that's the feeling, that's what we want. Right. But to change the code for one project is where I get hung up a little bit. And so how can we broaden the conversation a little bit to look at cabin zoning as a whole and just double check that these might be the right metrics for that. Otherwise I'd be supportive and then wholeheartedly in on the overlay district idea and vetting that more.
I feel like this is just, whether it's going to the committee or getting a cup of coffee. I'd like to see a plan of really what you're talking about. And that's the problem, is we're talking hypothetical, sort of without the detailed understanding of.
Yeah, and if I may, I think I did struggle with that as well, because obviously it's a lot easier to see something tangible, see something drawn out. At the same time, there is an active request for a road vacation, which is a quasi judicial hearing that the town council will eventually have to hear and make a decision on. And I think we try to walk that fine line of not prejudging out an application prior to that public hearing. And I see that nodding a little bit as well. So.
Yeah, but it's not a quasi judicial hearing with a lot of criteria that would
also true
disallow this council to simply say no because we don't like the phase of the moon. So in that respect, it's not your normal quasi judicial proceeding when there aren't any really criteria that would give you a right to the vacation, and they can simply say no. So I guess my point is I'm less concerned about this council seeing that potential project in this context than I would be in a normal land use application.
That's fair. Thank you. And so with that clarification, certainly we could have we could bring a little bit more detail on this. Up to you, certainly. Yeah. We could bring it back another time if you'd like as well.
If I may, I mean, this seems to me to be exactly the kind of deal why we created this workforce committee. It was to be able to negotiate with particular projects, determine what the fixes are, determine how we can actually move forward. And then, especially since this is part of, potentially vacating a piece of property, and all this is right in line with what we're talking about with everybody else, right? And which will also lead the conversation on the workforce housing overlay, right? So with that, personally, I'm not interested in changing the code verbiage as it is where this is. I am absolutely interested in you guys sitting down with the Workforce Housing Committee and let's come to a deal and figure out how we can make more workforce housing. I think we're all looking for the same thing, right? And so I don't see any reason why we can't come to some sort of agreement, that then the committee comes back to the council and the council can agree whether or not to go with it. I think it's exactly why we created this committee at this point in time. Thanks.
And I know we want to wrap this up. To add to the litany of, gee, I live in a small house too. Yeah, I spent 20 years in 980 square feet and lived the last year in 1200 with 2 kids and now a dog. And I don't recommend it. But you know, it's, everybody wants a little bit more. I get it. And, you know, as much as, you know, to kind of to turn your argument back around on you a little bit, Andy, as much as the local community would dig a 750,000, 1,500 square foot house, so would they dig a 550,000, you know, 1,000 square foot house, because, you know, people are trying to get a hold of whatever they can and make it work. And designs are coming around to making those kind of spaces more habitable, more livable. So I'm not, you know, at the end of the day, I want to make that. But these requests are so site specific that I like the idea of a housing overlay district being evolved very quickly and being applied site specifically, and having this as something we put on the table when we sit together and you sit with the committee and kind of say, yeah, now we can bring this to bear and that to bear. Because I don't want to tell you, you can't have a, it's not up to me to tell you, you can't have a 1,500 square. It's about how that works in the context of where it is. That's not going to work on every site in the RL district. It's just not going to happen. I live in the RL district and I don't know that I want a 30-foot house, 5 feet off my setback and 4 of them, you know? So I think we have to be very careful about the situation in which council is going to consider that application. In your case, it probably works great. I don't know. I haven't seen the layout. You seem to have, your neighbor seems to be on board. There's probably no other considerations when it comes to other adjacent property owners. Great, cross that obstruction off the list and charge forward. So, but I think it's having the opportunity to vet it at that level to make sure as those issues go away, there's more things we can bring to bear to make it work better for you, you know? So what I'm hearing is everybody's on board. Great, thank you so much. We kind of conversation that we, you know, really long to hear here is that you get a local person who wants to really work to make this a reality. I think the emphasis needs to be on figuring out a way, at least the skeletal framework of this housing overlay district, so that we know what direction we're going, so that we can give Andy some direction to kind of say this, yeah, we're going to make this happen. This has to be incorporated into how we stretch this thing to make that work, you know? But we can start with the, and to Rick's point, call it whatever you want, small home, you know, small home, you know, neighborhood thing or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's substantially totally workforce, we could take that and go wherever we can go, you know, pending the evaluation of this other potentially constraining criteria, which maybe in your case, we don't have. So, but that's where I think P&Z really gets a chance to look at this a little bit more subjectively, understanding council has given them this imperative to say, apply this vigorously to develop capacity. And I think then P&Z can come back in that situation, because that's really where they need to be. And then they can make those recommendations, I think. But we have to give them the opportunity to expand into that space. And right now they don't, obviously. So, but I think, you know, talking about doing the workforce, I mean, I know this is going to take some work, but, you know, we need to get together with Andy in the meantime, and kind of figure out what can we do to move this forward, you know? And I'm not sure this is your area of expertise, John, so I'm not sure, but I'd like to do whatever we can to make it work, you know, outside of changing the code.
So I'm hearing correctly, there's little interest at this point to actually amend the cabin zoning code. Maybe we bring that back for another look at another day, but we want projects like Andy's to come to fruition as soon as possible. He will meet with you folks, and I think it's safe to say the council is supportive of working through this workforce housing overlay idea and prioritizing that moving forward. Sorry, Don, I know that's probably the last thing you wanted to hear, but so I think we might try to rearrange your list a little bit if possible. You and I can chat on how that looks, but because this is not the only project that has great potential of getting more units in the right hands in Frisco. And I think that's the committee that we're referencing, I don't know if you are aware of that, is, yeah, you've talked to them before, just making sure that And so we'll, because we want this, I think there's absolute support for this project in some iteration to move forward. So we'll go with that. We'll work with Don and getting into the agenda and moving this overlay district idea forward and see what that looks like. So.
It's good by me.
Thank you all for your time. Thanks a lot. Mark, Lauren, thank you guys. Appreciate it. I'm surprised that cabin's that actually that big. I was surprised to hear it was 900 square feet.
My first custom slide was exactly that size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next item. Oh, do we need a break? All right, yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break.
It'll be a 5-minute item.
Don's gonna put something together. It's gonna be
Sorry.
Planning committee, it's an amendment to the zoning code. It's gonna go through hearings at the planning commission before it ever comes up here.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I believe we're now at the amended, we moved the work session agenda item number 3 to this time slot, and that is a conversation about housing helps and in-town water rates. Don?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'll be very brief on this. This was a request. As you know, the Housing Help Program was recently amended in order to open up partnership opportunities with the county and enter into and utilize the county deed restriction. As a result, recently there was a property owner who is interested in participating in Housing Helps, who happens to own a property on Pine Drive, which, as you know, is not within town limits, and therefore is when they're on water, they are subject to out of town water rates under the code. Currently, that's twice the current water rates. The property owner requested, okay, if I'm putting a deed restriction on this property in order to help housing, is there a way that I can get in-town water rates? Well, under the current code, the answer is no. So the opportunity here, or the here before you, to see if there's any interest on the part of town council to draft a code amendment specifically to allow a reduction in water rates on a case-by-case basis as part of a workforce housing deed restriction opportunity. If council is interested in doing it, it would require an amendment to town code section 171-11, which sets water rates and how they're applied to various properties. And
I wanted to make a clarification for you, I hope. And you said to revise the code to allow on a discretionary basis the reduction in the water rates. What you didn't say was the reduction in the water rates to the normal rate.
Correct.
There's a danger
That's
here
correct. Yes.
of taking this logic further and saying, well, gee, if we can give in-town rates to out-of-town folks based upon the affordable housing covenant, right? They're providing a restriction of the like. Well, then logically, we should be able to give them half of a water rate when they're in town from the normal rate if they give us a deed restriction. And my message to you on that is I don't think so. Because you are in that, our water rates and fees, whether it's a plant investment fee or a service charge, is a fee being charged for a service provided. The reason we do a rates study and look at what it costs us to obtain water and what it costs us to maintain our system, what it costs us to replace that water main, is so that we can maintain our rates and charges, whether they be a plant investment fee or a water service fee, at a level that meets the requirement to be a fee and not a tax, which is to say it has to be rationally and reasonably related. The fee has to be rationally and reasonably related to the cost of the service provided. If you start to use your water rates to essentially provide discount water to support your affordable housing goals, and if you don't backfill those waivers, right, by way of taking money from the general fund and paying that amount, what you then risk by failing that backfill is somebody making a claim that you no longer have a lawful fee here. What you have is a tax disguised as a fee, because what you're really doing is, yeah, you're paying the cost of the service, but some are paying more than the cost of the service and others are paying less because you're using your fee structure to accomplish perfectly legitimate public policy goals, but ones that have nothing to do with providing water service. So there's a danger here, and it's okay to bring it down to the town level. But if you want to make code amendments to say, oh, by the way, we'll consider whatever other discounts or waivers of like, again, fine. But my strong recommendation is you backfill that. You don't just give people the water for free. You say, in these circumstances, we will pay half of your plant investment fee, and you take money out of the general fund pocket, you put it in the water fund. So and I'll stop.
No, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Question I had, because this is water rates, not planned investment fee, right?
Yeah.
I think that the plant investment fees have been used, or the waiver of them has been used for other workforce housing.
There's a provision in the code that allows for it. I gave the same advice when it was adopted.
Okay.
I don't know what the town has done in terms of backfilling when it has provided waivers. But yes, that does exist in the code. There is not a mandate that it be backfilled. My recommendation is we should clean up all of it and say when these are granted, the town shall pay the fee on behalf of whoever it is. that's
And
being waived.
you had mentioned just now in this example, backfilling from the general fund, but could we backfill from 5A funds, which would be more tied to the
Yeah,
direct
I
policy
think, yeah, I
question?
think you could. Because the 5A question was broad and it allowed for affordable housing projects and programs, if I recall the language. So yes, you could.
Seems a little bit like an administrative nightmare to backfill an ongoing water rate
Yeah.
versus a one-time payment of a plant investment fee, right?
Agree, and I don't think, or at least I wouldn't at this point in time recommend,
Going below.
with Thad's, pending Thad's advice currently, certainly on this, it would be just to reduce to the in-town water rate. So it wouldn't be going below the in-town water rate. So it would be a fee set for service. Is that correct
Yes.
interpretation? So there would be no backfill required at that point.
And in terms of administration, I mean, if you have to keep up with who's paying half price, then it should be easy to keep up with what you've covered.
As far as financial impact, again, it's, we know what our water bills are, so it's not a large financial impact. Could it provide potentially an incentive to some people to enter into a workforce housing program or a deed restriction? Maybe. So that's, I don't know that not receiving this in-town water rate would stop this person from putting on the deed restriction either, so.
I personally, I see this one-off as we should grant them, your typical water rate, right? These are the areas that are attached to Frisco, because then we're looking at Lake Hill, right? Because all of a sudden Lake Hill, we're like, well, let's charge them 1.5, I mean, it's out of town and whatever else, right? But they're all workforce housing, or it's supposed to be, and whatever else, right? So Pine Drive is in Frisco. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like Bill's Ranch is in Frisco, right? And so, and we didn't extend water to somebody who just asked us.
They're
not long ago.
surrounded, they're not in, they're surrounded by Frisco.
But we're not extending, they're already on the water
Correct.
system,
This is
right?
an
Like, this is
existing
not
customer.
extending the
This is an
thing.
existing customer.
Sorry, I just want to make
That's
sure
a
I
key
understand
difference.
what we're asking.
And
Customer, very specific case.
yeah, all this does obviously relate into the negotiations on Lake
On Lake
Hill.
Hill.
And because you remember, right, we had started the agreement at in-town
One.
rate, and then we changed it to time and a half as a bargaining chip. We were gonna need to amend this code to accomplish that deal one way or the other. We were either gonna amend the code to say it, or we're gonna have to adopt the agreement by ordinance to say, to the extent this change, is contrary to code, this prevails. So it's all like this right now, and I don't know if this helps our bargaining position to do this now. Yeah, I do know
Right.
whether it does, yes.
Right.
No, but I-
Doesn't-
Yeah, I find it hard pressed to think that we're gonna end up at 1.5.
I don't.
With
think
Lake
we
Hill
will.
anyway, so.
We're not.
Yeah.
But, and again, I will point out there is a distinct difference between this and Lake Hill. This is an existing customer who is, we are purchasing a deed restriction from. So we are in a deal with this person to purchase a deed
Right.
restriction for workforce housing from an existing customer. Lake Hill is a brand new development, new plan investment fees, all this other stuff.
True enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Extension outside of town, yeah.
There too.
We just invested $75,000 into this restriction.
Well, and we could draft accordingly and make it only applicable to people currently on the system,
So if, but again, it is, we can do it either way. There's been one request and I don't know how many years. I don't know that it's incredibly pressing at this point in time, but we certainly can draft it however town council would like to proceed.
I think it also goes to the longevity and affordability of the tenant. I mean, once you start talking about utilities, it's that ongoing cost to people. And I think it is important for us to look at that. I do believe in paying the true cost of what it is to run a plant. I mean, that's really important, but I think that we do need, as per the previous conversation we just had, have more tools in the toolbox to incentivize people. Is this the deal breaker? Oh, okay. Just a cherry on top.
It's yeah. I think Councilmember Burley makes a very good point. it is the ongoing cost of utilities. Sometimes it plays a lot into affordability. That's why we're looking at energy efficiency whenever we're doing some of these deals, as well as trying to ensure that the cost of operation and actually living in the unit is continues to be affordable.
So I'm not sure where people supportive of this. I see,
Gaining
yes.
us more workforce housing. It's not like we're losing, much money, however much we're losing to not charge the extra half on top. I think it's one of the tools that we should have in our tool bag of what to offer people, and it doesn't cost us much. And, I'm for it personally.
I'm good with the language that this is in no way precedent setting for any other negotiations for build our way out of it projects to workforce housing. This is repurposing existing housing. that we
Part
wanna
of the
encourage.
housing helps.
I want to
Yep.
encourage that
Yep.
at a much higher level than build our way out of it projects. So
Yep.
there's a very obvious distinction. And I love that.
So, Rick and Melissa, are you?
I support it.
Rick? He leans in.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go with yes.
You can qualify that yes if you'd like. I'd love to hear it.
No, I'm just gonna, I support it. I'm just gonna leave it at that for now.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Mike, adding in the,
Thanks,
I
Tom.
think we're all in support of kind of what Andy said with the wording around that, so however that works. Once he did that, great. I think that wasn't too bad, Don. I think, what do we do on our time?
Probably close to 8 minutes.
All right. Then I believe that would take us to the last item on this evening's agenda, which is the executive session.
I don't have any
Notes.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, what?
Yep.
I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses B, conferences with an attorney for the town for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions concerning sex offender registration.
Move to enter into executive session. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Fallon. Is there any conversation on the motion? Call the question, please.
Fallon?
Yeah.
Kelly?
Yes.
Incan?
Yes.
Sherburne?
Yes.
Mortensen?
Yes.
Aronson?
Yes.
And Burley?
Just for clarification, we will be closing down our Zoom meeting and going into a separate Zoom meeting that is just an executive session.
And Melissa, you guys have that login?
Yep, I got it.
Okay, all right, see you guys in a second. JT, thanks for hanging out. Hope it was enlightening.
So start from the video, YouTube, yeah, YouTube first, yeah, that one's.